before we reach public comment, let's review the minutes from August 20th. Any corrections, additions, deletions? Jeannie, hard copy.
Oh, are you? Oh, geez, that's something I just don't do anymore.
So I was not here that, in full disclosure, I won't be voting on them. I was not here at that meeting. So if you had any adds, deletes, suggestions, corrections, anybody
No, I have none.
can I have a motion?
I move we accept the minutes as read, printed.
Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All abstentions, 1. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, so let's go into public comments. All right, so it's great to see everyone here. I have been talking with John Johnston. John works for Bread Loaf, correct?
Correct.
Bread Loaf, and I just wanted to understand engineering, construction better. So I've been picking his brain. I'm sure he's so sick of me calling that he sees me on this phone. He's like, hang up, it's Denise. So when he answered questions that I had, it made me start thinking, and it really educated me on some of the issues that I was unclear on. So, and John was asking a lot of questions, so I was hoping that we can clarify some questions to John tonight as well, before we go down the road. And just so that everyone knows, Kendra and I went to the last select board meeting on a Tuesday night after Labor Day, and they approved a $6,500 amount to get a quote for the band shell to see what needs to be done. And I'm not sure if the whole 6,500 will be spent on the engineering, stability for, to see if it's stable enough to do anything with. But we have $6,500 that they readily.
Well, to be clear, there wasn't a new approval. This was the
Still-
prior approval
Right.
that was just reconfirmed that they were in agreement with still doing,
don't have
to be clear.
Okay, here's.
There wasn't a new approval.
Everybody see. Right.
Right,
See,
and then
Duncan.
Put computer.
I screwed it up. I got the wrong link into the Warren meeting.
Oh,
The link is for last night's town center and library, not today's volunteer screen. And I have it.
okay,
The meeting exists, but no one has that. I can try to post stuff for you all, but I don't. No one's gonna get it. It's not
Yeah.
gonna be. It's totally my foul on that one, and I feel like I double checked that a million times, and I apologize totally
Okay.
on that one. That's bad. But no. Yeah. Keep.
Why don't
recording
you,
whatever you're doing,
Duncan,
and
why
keep
don't you,
recording.
why don't you email me the link in case somebody calls one of our cell phones?
Yeah.
And that way we could forward it.
I'll do the whole. I'll do the whole.
Group. Thank you.
Link to everyone in the committee. But
Okay, great. All right.
I just realized that now. I'm like, sorry.
No, that's all right. All right, thanks for calling back. All right, bye-bye. Okay.
So
So,
yeah, so there wasn't a new approval on that. That was just the one from before.
we
on-
just wanted to cross our Ts, dot our Is to make sure, because that one had expired from the structural engineer, that one had expired. So we just wanted to make sure we could go forward. And so we have a little more leeway now to go forward with getting another quote. Or
So-
getting a quote.
So they're gonna tell us everything that needs to be done to.
We want to sit down with them and go over what we're looking for.
Yep.
Whoever.
So, I mean, we know it needs electrical. We know the concrete needs to be done. We know it's rotting from the ground up. We know the beams are structurally
Somebody called you, I think.
unsafe.
Popped up and then it went away.
So,
Call.
we know there's a lot to look at. So, and maybe that's a conversation this committee has is, okay, what do you think needs to be done? And go right down through everything. We know it needs, if we keep it, we know it needs to be handicap accessible. And so there's a whole bunch of different ideas out there floating. Which, before we go and get a quote, we should probably decide, what we've heard from people, from the farmer's market, from the band committee, from, parents that are using it with their children.
Denise.
Yes,
They can't hear you in the microphone, so you have to go.
Come
to
up there,
the-
please.
There's no
yeah, this one,
There's none on that
that one
side.
works, that one doesn't.
Go up here.
Thank you.
Come on. Just be clear, if you hire an engineer, they're gonna assess it. We're not in the position to say, we want you to look at this, we want you to look at that. They will decide what their report says. So,
Bob, I'm gonna ask you a question, just education. If we get a structural engineer over there, are they gonna look at everything, or are they just gonna look at those beams, those support beams?
they should look at it as a whole. Because the beam might be still got half its life left, but it's connected to something that is past its life.
Hmm.
So this is just to hire a structural engineer. We haven't, or the town hasn't gotten a structural engineer that,
No,
okay.
No. This is just to get a quote to see what needs to be fixed.
Yeah, so you still have to put a request out for proposal,
Correct.
Right,
Okay.
nothing is out for RFP at this
Okay.
point,
right?
on volunteer screen.
So you're just saying we don't have to detail what we want to look at, just they should be able to do that. That's what,
Yeah,
that's
that's
what we're
their
hiring them to
report.
do.
Yeah, their report should encompass all that.
But, if
Provide a
it's,
scope of work.
Hmm?
right, but if
Provide a
it's,
scope of work, what the RFP is for.
Well, it's not an
It says a
RFP.
Full inspection.
Well, yeah, it's gonna be an inspection. And point out what's good and what's wrong, what's not good,
okay,
but the way you were saying it, it kind of said like, well, we're gonna make the list of things,
Mhm.
they've got their stamp, they've got to protect their stamp.
right, exactly. But if it's a dry, I guess, Bob, in my thought, if it's a dry day and you go over there, you're not gonna know the concrete has to be squeegeed out every time it rains before the Richmond band can play.
Yeah, but that in itself isn't a structural
Right,
question.
right.
That's just an inconvenience, but,
yeah, but it is something we would want them to look
well,
at.
right, they will look at the whole thing.
Safety issue.
They're gonna look at the whole thing, but they're, like I said. So.
Don't limit them.
But we're gonna
Is
have,
that really not limiting them by not listing everything, and we're expecting them to look at everything? But if we give them a list, in a way, we're limiting them as to their study.
Well, I think like Kara said, you can give them a general
Concerns.
concern of what we're looking
Yeah,
at, then
okay.
they'll take it.
And those were general concerns that we didn't know about that were brought to us by townspeople that use that facility. So, Kara,
Carol Matthew, I think, I'm just gonna scoot over to the microphone. I think if you're putting out a scope of work and you have certain areas that you're concerned about, that you want them to confirm, you're allowed to do that. You want them to confirm the foundation, if there's any foundational issues. You're saying that the drain has been designed and the slope of the pavement has been created for a certain purpose, but you're finding that there's an issue with that purpose, because if you're going for a structural engineer review, and you've got specific concerns, you need to express those concerns, or else they are not going to be aware of them. Yes, they're gonna tell you about the foundation. Yes, they're gonna tell you about the life of the beams, the roof, the electrical. They're gonna tell you all those things, but if you haven't expressed a specific concern, they're not gonna answer that question for you either.
Thank you.
Mm.
and is it a structural engineer's job to, I guess that wouldn't be how to add a handicap, how to make that handicap
No,
accessible?
That wouldn't be.
That would be the
structural, that'd be
contractor.
Civil or an
So you don't need to
That's
know,
the
that's not
architect.
something we have to add.
An architect, it would be an architect for.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I,
That type of a thing.
Right now, we want an assessment of the structure. And then the next thing would be what does it cost to fix things that have been identified? And can they be fixed?
so since I have 3, 4, 4 people, 5 people possibly with construction experience, I guess my question is a regular construction person going to know the structural issues, or are we definitely gonna have to hire a structural engineer
Structural-
anywhere?
The structural engineers, yeah, there are plenty of people and well, maybe not plenty, but there's people in Richmond that could take care of that. But they're not necessarily a structural engineer. They don't have a stamp. You know, they're not insured. They don't have a stamp. That's where you have to have the structural engineer in place.
John,
And to that point, I think the bigger picture is the ADA access to it. ADA access just to get up the plateau, okay? So when you start looking back, and one of the things I think from my perspective is you may not need to hire a structural engineer right now, but you need to hire potentially somebody, a landscaper or a civil, and do sort of an overall planning study depending on what you want to do within the park. Okay, there'll be setbacks. Okay, you have to get a ramp up to the plateau. You're gonna need, access if you leave the foundation and the slab where it is, you're gonna need the ADA access up there. And the last thing we haven't talked about is the codes. You may have to give the structural engineer some idea what the plan is. If it's just to leave it right there, there'll be things you can do, because if it's not more than a certain percentage of the structure's value, you don't have to bring it up to current wind loads. Snow loads probably aren't an aspect on that because it'll slope at a roof, but you would have to bring foundations and certain things up to current standards if you're going to renovate more than 40% of its value, say. So you need to look at all those things, I think, before you go out to a structural engineer and say, what do we do to repair the band shell? And I also, just from my perspective, and 40 years of building buildings for clients that have, a lot of our clients don't have a lot of experience either. And the bottom line is, I think you need to look at the overall plateau, so to speak, what I'm calling the plateau, that area that's above the floodplain, which where everything should be, and say, how do we even use all that? Because it's not a large area effectively to get what we want as the end product, the playground, I understand, and some other things. So I think you have to almost step back and take a little bigger look at it by hiring the right landscape architect that would be able to, I think it'd be a landscape architect in this case. But they probably get a civil engineer. Some landscape architects have civils on staff. And some of them civils have structural on staff. So,
Yeah, but we have, not that I disagree, not that I don't agree with you, but we're a small town. You start getting architectural people and architectural landscape people, to draw some grass and a couple of bushes. We don't have the money.
yeah,
I think that the structural engineer to look at that first is, the way to go. Unless you want to throw some more money on it now, but
Mhm.
I know it's not you. So, I'm talking for somebody who's been in town a long time and invested down there.
Mhm.
I would get the structural engineer first. Let them give you a scope.
Mhm.
It's not to say we can't see what there is for an architect out there for code review and things like that. But
as a person who I think I'm pretty thrifty, it kills me to think that we're gonna spend $6,500 and it may be for nothing. Or possibly $6,500 just to get that structural engineer to do his or her,
Stamp.
and it kills me that we have to even do that before, and then it may be for naught.
well, yeah, that's
But
always,
you won't know until you do it.
I know,
If
You
we,
got,
the fate
and that's
of,
just me.
the fate of the band shell, I think, depends on a report from a structural engineer that tells us the condition of the band shell. And then we look at, this is the condition. What would it cost to bring the band shell to solve all the problems we have? Then we decide, is it worth it or it's not? If it's not worth it, then we move forward And get a plan. If we're gonna keep the band shell, then we're at the point where, okay, the band shell's there. What can we do with the rest of the area? But I think until we decide something about the band shell, I don't see that we can
Mhm.
move forward much with anything else.
And I'd be a little bit. In today's market with everything going on, you might be lucky to find an engineer that would do it for 6,500.
Mm-hmm.
So,
We did have a
Well,
quote.
We had a quote.
Oh, you
Trey
had a
Bell.
quote,
Yeah, we had a
okay.
quote for
A year ago.
6,500. A
okay,
year
Yeah,
ago.
a
It
year
was a year ago.
well, okay, so yeah,
January.
No, November 13th.
who was it?
Trey Bell. Oh, right over here at,
Greg Sellers.
Oh, the new people, okay.
yeah, those,
But they had some things in there that, dealing with solving some of the problems without really us getting a report from them as to what the problems really are.
So you could go back to Greg and say, give us I'm just making up a number, for $3,000, giving us a report that, do you think this structure is worth saving? Without doing the next steps. And
Yeah.
that's common in the industry to say, we need a first pass to say and you have to go through. Did he give you a breakdown of what he was gonna do?
yeah,
Yeah, so you could go through there and draw a line, say, hey, Greg, how much for to do this much at this point, and then we make a decision.
right.
Yeah.
You know,
This was much more detailed than I think. It's more than the condition of the band shell.
right, so you could go through and just talk to him, he's a good guy.
And then
What, the one,
just so that you know too, I just wanted to give you some other information. Jeannie had been working with Mark Fausel on the Recreation Committee for over a year. And they had interviewed different companies to do the playground. And they both had come up and agreed on one company to do the playground. She has the exact measurements of that said playground, the layout, everything. So we already have that portion done. And all those numbers and the layout, everything. And did he,
But we have a layout for,
When it was
Below.
below.
When it was
below.
we've
have to
met
adjust.
with him and he's working on how to reconfigure that to fit that space.
right,
and then one other thing real quick, somebody said that the Sellers would do the electrical analysis, he will not. I don't know who said it.
no, I think we need electrical
Yeah,
analysis.
That.
Somebody got on. So maybe it all got distributed somewhere.
Perfect.
Can I ask
Ask
a
him how he found us.
question? They're still muted for a second. So once you get the engineering information, what type of person are you then going to get the quote of like how much this would cost? Like if you have a list of things that need to be done, like, is that a contractor? Is that some type of, you guys have listed a lot of different people. So who's the person who you then go to and say, okay, here's what we want done. What's a quote on what that would cost?
And
What type of
thanks for
person?
educating us or helping to educate us, because you guys are in the field, you've done this for years and years and years, but just so that we get a grasp on it.
Well, I'm Bob, I
I'm
have.
John.
John Johnson, Bob
So
Markey,
John,
Bressor,
obviously you
Mark
work with
Fossil.
Breadloaf.
Yep.
They would have people in-house, okay? I know plenty of people that would, be qualified to do, because you might not.
John's lived in Hidden Pines for years, and I
Okay.
happened to cut his hair, and I'm like always talking about this. I said, John, educate me. I need you to educate me.
So anyways, there's people around,
But
you know.
what is their kind of like role called? Are they a contractor?
Well, first, did Greg offer up an order of magnitude cost? Okay,
No,
he did not, that's not part of that.
they came up with, $5,000 for a basic scope of services. And then construction phase scope of services, 1,500. So,
So that almost sounds, I'm not sure. And I would.
there's more to,
Yeah,
verbiage
but
here.
that CA, the construction phase is inspections as it's being repaired. So I think he's giving you a full design in that $6,500.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's what construction services. So he's gonna design it from that, you just put it out to bid to a timber frame in all likelihood, or a GC. That foundation's interesting, to say the least, with the piers around.
Or you take
Slab.
Gary and put Gary out there since he built it, and he knows the ins and outs.
We're trying to get an unbiased opinion.
Well, then Fran, you should probably not be on the committee because you put your stuff out there two meeting ago, how you hated that thing. So
I
you're
never,
not,
I,
you're not biased.
I-
You're biased on that.
Well, she's allowed to be, she's on the committee.
So,
and I wouldn't say I hated the band shell.
you called it ugly.
Anyhow, are we done with this?
Anyways.
So, anything else that while we're in public comment, you can think that would help guide us? And we have not talked with them to go back, but, and we're getting the information from the farmer's market, from parents of children that use it down there, from the Richmond band. Who else gave us?
The public.
Mainly the public, playground users, the farmer market users,
The dance studio.
the dance studio, people who
Richmond
rent
Community
it.
Band.
Yeah. So it had all come
Yeah, well,
into us.
once you get the scope of what needs to be done, like I said. John,
Yeah,
John's outfit could.
Yep.
Come up with numbers. And
yeah. But what I think what Greg's gonna give you is a bid package. You just
I
put
think
the
so, too.
RFP out, and you're gonna get numbers back for the true cost. Or you could not put the RFP out, and yes, you could go to Bredlow.
So
for somebody
something
to give you
else
an
that
estimate, yes.
we're weighing as on this committee, because we're trying to take in everyone's opinion, is do we just get rid of the band shell, build a pavilion that has a handicap bathroom? And so that's one of the things that we're weighing on this committee, to get more, public input, like I can't walk down. And none of the bathrooms we have now, I don't know if you know this, John, except for that porta potty, none of them are handicap accessible.
Yep.
So someone in a wheelchair, somebody in a walker, plus number one, they can't walk down there, and then they can't get in it. And then also last summer, I'm not sure if she was a resident or not, but a woman fell and was severely hurt.
She was from the community senior center, so
She was a senior center.
It
Okay.
was a
So
senior
she-
center activity.
So trying to get into the band shell fell because it wasn't handicap accessible, and that, right there was pretty scary. So we know we need to make the band shell handicap accessible to make sure that other people can use it. And then we need handicap a bathroom, which this year they were going to just get regular standard bathrooms, and our committee kind of talked the select board into getting handicap bathrooms, and they have one up at Browns Court and now
That's
one
all.
at
on
Portage
the
Green,
parking lot.
porta potties.
Yep.
So trying to do something ADA compliant, and I know that there's funding out there for when you upgrade and do ADA compliant stuff. So, we're trying to do more good for everyone.
Yep.
And make it more accessible, and we've had testimony from people saying, please be more compliant. Anything else you guys can think of that? Anybody else, public comment? Virginia's like, no.
I'm gonna talk about the zoning.
Okay. Okay,
On to Gary.
I'm
Let's go.
assuming that's on your agenda.
It is.
Seems to be on your agenda.
is.
So
but Gary is before you, and Gary has a proposal for us as well.
I didn't, do you have more copies? I think people,
No, there was a digital version sent around, so I assumed you were gonna show it.
Oh, I didn't receive one at all.
no, we didn't.
Where do you get one?
I got a note from Chris Haggerty saying he was asked if he can share the digital version, and I said yes, and
Wasn't from,
no.
Yes,
But that
with the
was,
playground person.
but that was not the digital version
Of
of
what?
your proposal. That was the,
No, I think it was.
what was it then?
I
Cause
thought
that's
it
the only
was
thing
the
he's done
flood
for me.
elevation.
No, okay,
So just so anybody who doesn't know, Chris Haggerty, what's his title?
Surveyor.
He's a surveyor.
Mhm.
So he did all the work for us at Browns Court, and the town, I think, was so impressed with all the stuff he did up there. They hired him to take care of Volunteers Green as well. And so he's been doing a lot of the survey stuff at Volunteers Green, especially when it comes to the plateau. And he's made 2 presentations or 3 presentations.
He's been here a
Maybe-
number of times.
He's been here a number of times, so, I didn't even realize Chris,
Okay, so Gary went to Chris with his plans? Gary had Chris do plans?
I don't know, I have no
On
idea.
Gary's dollar or the town's dollar?
I have
No,
no
not
idea.
Either one, Chris
He did it for
volunteered.
volunteers, I want that to be known. I already know that Chris is doing things for free for the town. I think it's very, and for citizens, I think that's very important.
Yeah,
that we
very
give him-
generous.
I, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate
So
that.
do you have it so we can share
I-
it?
I am trying to get.
Well,
to
you
it.
know,
Okay.
it may,
So he did give me, I asked him for a
Okay.
copy, so that's what it is that I just to give to the playground, when I was talking to playground
rep.
rep.
so
And I
that
didn't even
plan
realize that was.
is still basically Bob and my and Pete Goslin's idea. But I think since that plan was generated, the zoning has really taken a slightly different turn than where I thought it was gonna go when we did that plan. So I don't think it's, at this point, maybe later in the evening, it might make sense for me to make a comment on the plan, but right now, I think the public and you should really know the zoning stuff first, because when I talked to Tyler's, because it's not in the floodplain, it's in the floodway. And the ban shell is a pre-existing non-conforming use. He said that the town, he would allow that to be repaired. It could be turned, it could be taken down and a new ban shell built, but nothing else, no pavilion. It has to be another ban shell. So that's his
So-
viewpoint.
Just so that you know too, Tyler sent us on the committee some measurements for the existing playground and they're incorrect. We've had 3 people measure what we have existing. So,
Should I share this with you? And then you can share it to.
and so we differ with Tyler, I guess, I don't know
Is
who
his-
sent him over there, but he went over and
Are his
measured.
measurements bigger?
I'm sorry,
No, they're not even half. the
smaller?
size.
yeah.
When we can get into that, but.
So, that's something we'll need to bring up with Tyler
Yeah,
at a later
whatever.
date, and I don't know who sent him over there
He
to
just did it
measure.
on his own.
He
Oh,
went
yeah.
on his own.
He did.
Yeah.
Okay, Kara,
I'm not sure what, I know Virginia's here for the planning commission to talk to you about the zoning stuff. I attended the joint meeting with you guys and the select board. I was there with the state individual who was there talking about FEMA. I've been working with all of this stuff since before Tropical Storm Irene. How these floodplains are, these floodway regulations have the ability to be amended to what you guys are looking to do. If you are trying to mitigate and make it better, it's not what Tyler can do right now. It's not what Tyler can approve right now. We sat in that meeting and the select board and the state person and the planning commission all heard that you guys want to make it better by moving the playground and by possibly replacing the ban shell with a different structure and potentially getting rid of the lower bathrooms. I'm putting a bathroom up higher because we keep spending money every time it floods. We have to clean those bathrooms. There's a problem with those bathrooms. We have to clean those bathrooms. It's a safer place. What you guys have proposed doing, which I never thought of, and I started on the ARPA committee and worked with the UVM student for the first plan that went through. Where my understanding is this is at, is you guys need to come up with a plan. And then the planning commission, directed by the select board, because they are their boss, can amend the regulations to allow for the municipality to mitigate its risk and move structures to a higher elevation. Period. He said it was a 2-sentence change. The state guy, play the tape back. 1 or 2 sentences could be added to allow you to make that change that you want to make. I was there. I heard it. So no matter what Tyler wants to keep saying and how he's measuring, He can only interpret what's in front of him. You have nothing in front of him right now for him to interpret. It's not his job to say what can or can't happen in the future. It's the regulations. We all know they need to be changed, and they need to be changed based on the plan you come up with. Thank you.
Any other comments before we move on to Miss Virginia? And Mark, you're both on that committee. Please join us.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to talk about the zoning. So coming out of that summit meeting, we wanted to make sure that we were going to be able to move the structures that were in the lower part of the floodway to what we call the grassy knoll, but I guess it's now being called the plateau, because the grassy knoll has other implications.
Yeah.
So the plateau, this includes the playground, the restroom. The band shell is already on the plateau. So those were the main features that we would like to get moved to the plateau. So we looked at some different methods of writing zoning, because as Kara said, it's true that the zoning administrator, whoever it might be, has to look at the zoning, what's in front of him. That's what he has to work with. So the goals here were to be able to move these structures to another part of the floodway. If the plateau were actually out of the floodway, that would be easier, because the regulations are less and the implications are less if things are out of the floodway into the higher part, which is the floodplain. But in fact, the whole thing is the floodway, including the plateau. Even though we may think that that's a safer location, on the maps, it is in the floodway still. So we wanted to be able to move those structures. We wanted to write zoning that did not detrimentally affect anyone who owned a residence in the floodway or the floodplain, who have pre-existing rights. We wanted not to change a lot of things about the rest of the zoning. If we wanted to do this fairly expeditiously, you want to just change one section at a time and not have to review the whole town, the effects of your regulations. So what we ended up with as a strategy is to say that whatever's in the park right now is a non-conforming structure. We want to lessen the liability for the town to have to pay for things, to have to maintain them over and over again. We did not want to add more things into the floodway that would then be a liability for the town. So we're calling whatever's existing now non-conforming structures. And we're rewriting the zoning, which the Planning Commission has approved for public hearing that you're all welcome to come to. It's going to be on the 16th of October. We're rewriting it to allow for structures to be moved around within the floodway. So the playground could be moved to another location, which we assume would be up on the plateau. The restroom could be moved to another location. We have written it also so that it could be, besides being relocated, which language was not in our existing zoning, these structures could be made smaller. We don't want them to be made bigger, because that increases the flood hazard. Anything you do in the floodway that increases the flood hazard is something you don't want to do. You're making it worse. If you change in any way, you obstruct the water, you make the velocity greater, you make the level of the water greater. It doesn't make sense from a resiliency point of view to put bigger things or more things into the floodway. So we can move the things that exist. we had to work through all of the details and, you know, while you can say that it doesn't matter what Tyler wants or doesn't, right now, he's the zoning administrator.
Right.
If you want to do this in the foreseeable future, then we need to do, you know, we need to work with him and do something that is going to work for him as well. So
Only
his-
after we approved the zoning regulations. I think Kara's point was
yes,
that
after
we could write
approve-
whatever we wanted.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then it would be okay with Tyler, but right now Tyler's interpreting it as the extremely strictest level, so.
Right.
It's not like he's writing the regulations, he's interpreting them very stringently, and it depends on the planning commission's desire to change the regulations to enable what your commission wants.
Mark, are you saying that Tyler's interpretation right now is of the proposed regulations that the planning commission has? Or of the existing ones?
The existing.
You can't even move anything right now, he said.
That's right.
Right, well,
So-
that's what he
But,
can
but
decide.
that, and then, you know, there are certain people, obviously, people who want to minimize or eliminate any impact whatsoever. And then there's other options that could be interpreted as not being significantly more impactful, but closer to satisfying what you guys want with like a pavilion or whatever, or an enlarged space up there, or a bathroom concession stand that is bigger. We don't really know what the FEMA interpretation is of that, whether you can enlarge the bathroom if you move it or not. We don't really,
You can't increase the flood hazard, is their interpretation.
To be clear, just to clarify, none of us have talked about enlarging
Yeah.
anything.
well, I
So,
mean, if
I
you
don't know
put
if
it,
we have
if
to
you're
go
gonna,
there
if you're gonna switch
more than
over to
just-
pavilion, will the pavilion be the same size as the
That's what we're
rotunda?
talking about, yeah.
That was your intention?
Yes.
The same square footage?
Yes.
So anyway, to continue with what we currently have in front of us that is going to be brought up at our public hearing is you can relocate a structure, you can repair it, you can reconstruct it with new materials, you can make it smaller, basically.
But it has to look like
But it has to look like what's there, basically,
that hamstrings us.
for it to be a relocated structure rather than adding something new into the floodplain,
So that,
which is opening up a window that we don't want to open up to
But if
put
you-
something new in.
it doesn't allow you to eliminate an existing structure that sort of captures a lot of the water and put something less impactful
Right.
to flow through.
Mhm. You can remove the structure,
So I have a
but you can't
question.
put new structures. So if you put something like a smaller band shell, but it has to look like a band shell, this is according to what we have worked out with Tyler that he would approve under new regulations. He is very reluctant to theorize about what he would or wouldn't approve. But from our point of view, there's no point in us putting something in that he's actually not going to approve. That's not going to solve our problem. It's going to waste time. So we have dug out of him as much as possible. What if we put this word in? Would you approve it? So
Is there, and you
And-
both know the
yeah.
rules and regs way better than I, is there ever a time when things are superseded because you're trying to make the ADA accessibility issue? Is there ever a time when something trumps when ADA is involved, it trumps what the rules are? I mean, I don't know if you're getting to my question. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these basically,
no, that's
what's
true.
happened is, these rules have been interpreted as not wanting to have anything stricter, and there's a lot of different ways to interpret that. But we have the opportunity to change more. That didn't really pan out because of the pushback from town staff. That there was only so many things that they would tolerate, when in reality, the zoning could have been completely rewritten. But yes, there are things that can be done to improve the increase the footprint for like the ADA ramp.
See, I disagree with that, but
Yeah,
we've had this
there are allowed. I don't know if
dick,
we've written that into
planning
our
commission.
zoning regulations.
yeah, you can,
But-
you can make a handicapped accessible ramp if it's within the footprint.
What, the
The
structure?
footprint of the structure that's
Well,
existing. So for
To the
instance,
plateau Without a ramp. That's the bottom line.
Well, the idea was to.
And they're saying you
use the
can't build a
sidewalk
ramp.
So you get up level with it, so you're not entering the property until you.
Does anyone on
There's not a
the
sidewalk
committee
going
have questions
to the
before we
main
go
shop.
out?
And that is a new structure.
you can put the ramp, for instance, in the structure of the band shell within, you know what I
It
mean?
would take away
So you
a good
could,
part of the band shell.
yeah, and
So you
in
couldn't
terms,
put it on the side, like winding up behind the back of it? If we kept it, and you couldn't put it like siding around the back of it?
the exact same structure. I don't think so. I don't think Tyler would approve that because it's adding something into the floodway.
One point that he would allow,
I thought he did too.
there was, I'm just trying to read, because it said, and I would allow, or.
Or was that the FEMA guy?
No,
And-
That was Tyler, but I
Yeah.
don't know what note.
Well, that's something that we could talk more about if he has said that he would allow it, because he has
Mhm.
told us that
Don't
he
leave
would
yet, we
not.
have a question, so.
I totally disagree with this approach. I'm going to fight this approach because like Fran says, it's not about the look of what's there. When you take walls out from that concession stand in that bathroom, that is holding water, that's holding water back, it's impeding, but when you can build a larger band shell that's just post on a concrete slab with a roof that allows flow through. The big thing with flood mitigation is about flow through to not have the structure collapse or move. So if it's anchored to the ground and that allows flow through, you can go with a larger size structure than what like the band shell that's there. But to stay with the exact look and aesthetics, now we're getting to new zoning regulations that they're trying to put something in there that doesn't have to be there. But they're choosing to do that to protect the band shell, to protect whatever they
No.
don't want you to do.
No.
Because if
Kara.
it's simply, this is my
You
opinion.
have no
I-
idea.
I
what
have
you're
my
talking
opinion.
about.
I have my opinion.
Okay, so don't ascribe things to other people that you
You
believe
said it
they're
has to
doing.
look the same way. It has to look the same way as the band shell.
For it
You
to be
said that,
a
that's your
relocated
word.
structure, for it to be a
That's your word.
relocated structure.
So you can have a pavilion without the walls of the band shell that allows water to flow through. It's about flow through. The engineers will all tell you that. That's what it's about. So to keep going back to Tyler to say what he would interpret, if you clearly specify that municipalities can do the following for the purpose of to mitigate and save life and mitigate risk to property, you're allowed to do those things. So I'm going to fight hard against these zoning regulations if they say anything about it has to have the same look. Because the same look has nothing to do with engineering.
No, it
Nothing.
just has to be a band shell, which has a
A
wall.
pavilion can be a band, it doesn't have to have a band.
Who defines band shell?
Correct. So
Band
I'm
shell
going
is defined in the
against this.
dictionary, but
I'm gonna
anyway.
fight this. I'm not gonna agree with it. I think you guys, that the planning commission is trying to do something else here that you're not trying to do, and that's not what the state said you had to do, and it's not what the federal government said you had to do. I have the code book, code 44. I get it. I know what you can do and you can't do. And you can tweak this, and if you are very clear in your regulations, Tyler will not have room for interpretation. He will not have to say what he would do or wouldn't do. Black and white says what he can and cannot do. He has to interpret it by the black and white and no gray.
So writing regulations is not, there are implications when you write regulations about the future of, for instance, the floodway. If you're writing regulations about the floodway, if you open it up to putting new structures on, you're opening it up to new structures. So there are limitations about writing regulations. If you want to write a regulation that is going to be wise and resilient into the future, you want to be very careful about what you say. If you want to say you can move structures from one place to another, then you want to move the structure from one place to another.
Can you replace with new?
You can replace with
Does it say
new.
that?
You can replace, you can reconstruct it with all new materials as long as it's basically the
Right.
same thing.
Is
So,
that the FEMA
Go
regs?
at the playground.
No, that's your regs,
no, that's the regulation, that's the way we made it work.
your regs.
The way we put in a regulation that would actually work.
But it
or
would
into
also
the
work
future.
if it were.
So how would the
enlarged or
regulation be written?
remodified.
You can build it any way you want? Is that what the regulation would
As
say?
long as it's less impeding.
You could say that it, instead of saying that it, you're moving the same structure, that would serve the same purpose.
There you go.
Because that's.
Well, a pavilion and a
serves the
band
same
shell do not
purpose.
serve the same purpose.
How
That's
not?
the problem. A
Because
band
we
shell
use
is a
them
structure with
interchangeably.
a
They have-
sound.
Well, we put picnic tables up there and we use it as a pavilion, so it's used as a pavilion now.
It's a multi-use building,
Do
really.
we have a definition of pavilion in our zoning
Big
regulations?
definition between.
No.
I don't think
Or
we.
band shell, but if they're used from the
But it's as
dictionary.
simple as that, saying to be used for a similar purpose, and it will be, as it currently is.
It seems
That's
like
the intent.
we're missing the opportunity to reduce
The walls.
the impact of
Our
of
flooding.
flooding. By the, we could take that whole concession stand, bathroom away. And put something smaller and a redesigned band shell, whatever, that could also serve as a function for putting some picnic tables under it and have less impact than we have now. But the way I'm interpreting what you're saying is we can't do that.
The way
You
the
could make it a
zoning
small-
regulations are currently
something that-
written, that's correct. We can't do this. The way the proposed regulations have been written, you can't do that.
You can make a
According to
smaller band
FEMA,
shell.
Mhm.
You can do that. We wrote these regulations very conservative, frankly, and I'll just come out and say it. We had almost no discussion on this. And what came out isn't necessarily what I'm in favor of. But I voted to move it forward to get it out of the planning commission's hands and into the select boards, because I think this warrants other options that weren't presented as options in the planning commission meetings. And I think you guys are obligated to come to the select board.
Well, we
Want to
have the
move
planning
there?
commission first.
Well,
So
yeah,
they can come to the
because-
planning commission hearing.
So on the 16th.
Which will go
16th,
probably
will there
nowhere
be
at the
a
planning
FEMA
commission.
representative at that public meeting,
No.
At the public hearing,
at the public hearing, I'm sorry.
we have not invited
Just
a FEMA.
means you have to open to the public in order to change any word.
Yeah, so anytime you want to amend the zoning regulations, the planning commission has a public hearing, they vote to approve a document, we voted to approve this document. It will go to a public hearing
Mhm.
by the planning commission. Then,
Is it
After
planning
that-
commission only or planning commission and select board?
no, it's planning commission only,
Okay, okay.
and then we listen to what is the testimony. So you all should come
Mhm.
to the planning commission hearing. And you should read the document, by the way. Because I
Is
think
there a
you will find it
specific
interesting.
Section that,
It came to you,
pertains-
by the way.
right, is it just that section that pertains to Volunteers Green? Or is it for the entire town?
It's for the
We
floodway.
did not parse
overlay
out
district.
a sub
Floodway district.
flood hazard overlay district for public
Yeah.
property, which was an option, but we didn't explore or develop that option at all. We just kept it all as one
So-
district.
For public property, it doesn't matter whether it's public or private property.
Kind of
The
does.
flood hazard
I've
overlay
had this debate
district
with you before. It
regulates
does.
floodway.
That's not the point.
So
It's,
the
not in-
document is now available for us to read.
Yep.
Red line
Did
version?
everyone on the
Yes.
committee get it?
No.
No.
You,
Okay, I got it.
Kendra
Yeah.
got it.
So we'll
So if you
forward
could
it.
distribute it to your
Right,
committee
to my committee.
members, they can read it.
Virginia, is it on the website in a red line version for the public?
It will be under the 16th of October. Probably not up there yet. It's a little soon, but.
Can I ask
So,
a question?
okay, so anyway, so just to finish the
Okay, I'm sorry.
discussion. We did not want to say that you can put anything new that you want in the floodway for the reasons that I elaborated. So that left us to relocating the existing structures. The bathroom can be relocated. It has to go away where it is, but it can be relocated. You can make it smaller. You can construct it out of stainless steel or whatever you would like to construct it out of. You can make a new bathroom. It has to be within the footprint of the existing bathroom, but if you make it a
Or
little
smaller.
smaller, then you can have a ramp and whatever else you want up on the plateau.
The ramp would be a separate structure, independent of the bathroom, or
But it would be in the footprint.
it wouldn't be in the
You
footprint,
need to
because
have
you
a
have to get the
ramp to
ramp
get to-
up from the parking lot
level
up
plateau.
to it, so it's not in the same footprint. And it's no way would it be attached to the
Why
bathroom,
isn't it
even if you
coming from
whittled
the-
that band shell down to 10-foot diameter, you wouldn't have enough square footage to put in a ramp to run up from the driveway. The way the current zoning regulations have been written and will be interpreted by the current staff.
Right, if we were to renovate that bathroom down there, we'd have one bathroom in that big building. Because it's not big enough to, renovate for a handicap bathroom, isn't that?
No, it can be.
But you'd only have one.
And even if you were to
No.
destroy it and move it up,
One
up
stall,
to the
right?
plateau, you would have the
One
same problem.
stall.
You would have a single bathroom.
Mhm.
But you might need it to be bigger. I don't know what size those bathrooms are.
They're
for
big.
Turning radius, they're
They're
big.
big. Well, you can't, the doors aren't very, I guess the doors are wide enough, but there's
A ramp.
a lip.
Yeah.
Of this
What
much
are-
to get in, and this bathroom stalls are not,
Narrow.
they're too small.
Yeah.
There's room to make them bigger.
So you would, on the same footprint, you would be able to put a handicapped bathroom
Mhm.
on the plateau.
Yeah, and you could
So
do
that's
one smaller. You
Or you
could do
could do
one
one
smaller
smaller.
and it's just one
one room.
unisex.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that is acceptable. It comes under the rubric of moving a non-conforming structure, which the bathroom is in this.
But does it have to look like
Floodway.
it and be brick and stuff like that, since the band shell has to be looking like a band shell? Does
No,
the
it
brick
doesn't
building
have to
like a
look-
brick Building?
It doesn't have to look like it. It just has to be the same use. Let's put it that way. So it's a restroom use. You
But
can
there's no
reconstruct it
pavilion use.
with any material. A pavilion is not a band shell.
And a pavilion's not a concession stand or a bathroom, so you can't ever build a pavilion because it's a new use of a structure that you haven't had before,
Yeah, you can put the restroom up there without the pavilion part.
right? So you
That's
can have
what we
a
have so
bathroom-
far, and you can come to the public hearing and you can express these comments then. I'm just telling you what we've approved, so you may have your own thoughts about that.
so.
And that's
can you
fine.
Just walk me through, so that night at the meeting, when we come together.
Yeah.
And if you get public input
Mhm.
and they say, no, this isn't gonna work. I mean, do you take it back to the table? What makes you change your mind? Is it the committee that votes not to accept the rules? Is it the people, the outcry from the people? I apologize, I've never been to one. I've never
Yeah.
been to one.
No, we
Adopt
just
the
take,
rules.
the point of having a public hearing is to take input.
Education, yeah.
So that should
see.
follow the outreach effort that has been made. I don't know whether you all have made a lot of outreach to the community as to what do people want to spend their money on?
Mhm.
Do they
Yes.
want to spend their money on, making a new structure or keeping the old structures or moving these? I mean, you can just keep these things there where they currently are and keep fixing them.
at $67,000 a playground?
Yeah, well,
Good.
that's why we're doing this, is to
Yeah.
allow them to be moved to a new location, which hopefully is still in the floodway, but is hopefully less impactful.
John,
So that's what you, anyway, to finish the
Oh,
answer to
sorry.
your question. So we take all the information that we receive and work with the document if we feel it needs to be worked with. And then we forward a version to the select board that then has a public hearing. So you can then come to that public hearing and express whatever comments you want to make there too.
And the select board can also have an informational meeting before their public hearing. And they can make any kind of modifications they deem appropriate.
Yeah, and usually what happens is they suggest modifications,
Yeah.
it goes back to the planning commission, and we try to work with that.
I see.
So I'll also just mention that, by the way, it's interesting to me that in your new wording, you've added a comment or an explanation or a definition, whatever you're calling it, on a recreational path. That's kind of outside of the scope of this, and it seems kind of an added on to kind of change the later future position. Not that this committee is talking about doing that anymore, but it's just interesting that that was kind of added on.
Well, the reason that that was added in, if you'd like to have a reason for it,
I,
is in section 2.44 of the zoning. It says that recreation paths are allowed in all districts. We have no definition of recreation path. So that does affect this district, since we're working with revising a district. There's no definition of recreation path in our zoning ordinance, so that's why we put that in there.
Is that in section 6.8 or is that in your definition?
it's in the definitions, very last
It's
page.
in section
that it-
7, it would apply to the whole
Any
town,
ability
because
to-
recreation paths are allowed in all districts according to section 2.4.4. So,
John,
I'm gonna push back a little here on there needs to be ADA access from parking lot level that meets ADA codes. Sidewalk will be way too steep.
and
Guarantee
whose rule is that?
That's ADA.
But
That's a
I mean,
federal.
in terms of pre-existing structures?
They're not, you're moving.
They're not. But the town would get ridiculed if you put an ADA bathroom on the plateau and you can't get to it
Okay.
with ADA standards.
So
That's
you-
so
You can't go across the grass
it's too steep.
from the sidewalk.
The sidewalk's too steep.
Where the
So
fire,
to get to
Sidewalk
the
is-
The
sidewalk.
sidewalk is too steep for ADA.
the sidewalk going up to the
It's an
bridge.
inch per foot.
Mhm.
Yes.
I guarantee
It's never putting a bathroom up there then.
No.
What prevents us from putting a playground up there with ADA accessible playground up there too?
You have to make
Can't move anything up there.
Except the
You
place
have to
is
put
a
a ramp.
non-conforming structure. You can't require that to be ADA accessible.
If you've
A
moved it, you
non-conforming
can.
If you move it,
structure.
And
it could be.
and if you
That's
do
what I'm
more than
saying.
40%.
If you put a playground there, and I don't know,
So
I'm not
you're
a
moving
playground
a
expert on
non-conforming
ADA,
structure.
but if you put a structure up there, okay, you have to have ADA access to that level. That's why we have to put elevators in every building to get people to the level. You can't not do that.
Even if it's an already pre-existing non-conforming structure, you can't require that those.
No, for the ban shell,
Think
no.
about ADA when it
But if
comes
you
to
want to make the
grounds.
ban shell ADA
No, but
compliant,
I've thought a whole lot about what he's
you have
talking
to
about.
get a way
It's
to
very
Yes,
get
you-
from the parking lot to the
Right.
ban shell.
Whether you're required or not is.
So
I agree. If you don't, it's all how much you do
Yeah,
to
we
a
know
structure
this.
if you pull ADA in.
Requirements or not.
But you
Do
can
we want
change
people, do
grades.
we want people who are ADA, having
But
ADA,
have to have a path.
have an accessibility
Right, but
or
you
not?
can- if
Because if
something-
you don't build it for ADA accessibility, period, whether regulations require you or not, you're stopping people who are in wheelchairs from having access to structures, period. We should have a practice that we encourage building more and more and more ADA accessible areas for people in our community. Because we're being exclusive if we don't. We're not being an inclusive community, we're being an exclusive community. So no matter if regulations required or not, you should encourage.
But Kara, what we're saying,
Accessibility.
like, we can build a playground that's accessible. But if people can't get from the parking lot
No,
up to the
no, what
playground,
I'm talking about is
Yeah.
their regulations should have a loophole that allows for development for ADA purposes, period. We should want that. We should not have a rewrite regulations and have it left out.
So here's my, I have a question in this.
I want it in the
It,
regulations.
would the zoning regulations allow you to build a path that, you know, it's a turn back up to the plateau?
You're talking about a paved path.
She
Paved,
just excluded it in her.
a paved path, could you do a paved path, switchback, so to speak? Because that's what it would have to be to get it to ADA.
Otherwise,
under the
ramp
proposed
would have to-
regulations.
Right, so I think there's a fundamental, that's
Yeah.
all,
Exactly.
It's
And
a
so that
problem
sidewalk,
area.
it is,
It's a problem
I
area.
agree.
It's in the floodway.
I agree.
You
Whether
don't wanna
it's in
put
the
stuff-
floodway or not, that ADA getting there seems like a bigger problem.
yeah,
Kara,
I've had that. That was my.
Might have to leave it where it is.
I'm just concerned because when we sat at that summit, it was discussed that you guys were talking about a pavilion, which is a new structure, replacing an old structure with a new structural look. And if the planning commission didn't build it, and we've heard right now that those new regulations proposed do not allow for that, so we'll never have a new pavilion anywhere,
Well, in the floodway, we're talking,
anywhere in Volunteers Green.
right?
Right.
It's all
The place
floodway.
where everybody would want it, with a picnic table and access to have access to the park and the playground and family gatherings and stuff like that. We're never gonna have it allowed, and that's not what the select board sat here and thought they were getting. And they didn't think that that's what the planning commission was gonna do. So if the planning commission didn't listen to the select boards, then Mark's agreeing. So if you got two planning commission members here who are sitting here who don't even agree.
Yeah, we have that
And the
often,
select-
by the way. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's nothing new. It's all good.
It's funny to me because the select board had a special meeting with you to give guidance about what they wanted and what could
No.
happen. And it's not going in the direction, this is not actually doing anything.
I disagree with you, but.
I think, I think
This is,
time to
yeah, move it along.
move it along, and
This
then
is-
But
we
this
need to
gives us-
go
this
to
has
that
given us
meeting.
A lot to think about.
Yeah.
And can I just ask one really quick question and questions before you guys leave?
yeah.
So John,
I
so
didn't even really.
the
explain
sidewalk that we built up, that could
You mean
never
the
be,
sidewalk to the bridge,
yeah, that
I
could not
believe, I have to go,
measurement,
you have to have the surveyor survey it,
right?
but I can lay odds it's too steep.
So
It-
people
it definitely
can't,
12 or something.
handicapped people can't walk over the Bridge Street Bridge ever.
Correct. It's not it's not.
Doesn't
it's
meet
not
standards.
It's
not
pretty
required.
distant.
To count it as that sidewalk, the grade would have to go past the pizza place.
Yeah.
In order to make it a,
It's a
truly-
pre-existing structure that we can't fix all of those.
right. That was,
So,
We have the opportunity to might be able to fix this one if we all work together.
Correct.
I mean, to allow for children to get to a playground, allow grandparents or aunts and uncles with anybody, any kind of disability to be able to get to a bathroom or a playground with their children. We have the ability, if we all put our heads together and worked, to come to some kind of solution on this.
yep. Well, you can bring these to the hearing,
Yeah.
your comments. And was there anything else that you wanted to talk about besides the ramp?
I'd like to read what Tyler had said and see how all of you interpret this. So the band shell needs to look the same or very similar to what
Okay,
currently exists.
when was
No,
this?
this is about the ramp.
And it's not
It's
the
got the
look
ramp in it.
exactly.
Okay.
It's
Correct.
just that it has to be a band shell, which has a
Exactly.
sound reflecting wall.
Yeah,
So-
His interpretation is much stricter
Correct.
but,
than that.
okay, but I wanted to just get this ramp part. I'm trying to get this piece.
Okay.
There, this is what
Yeah.
I can't understand. So you provided the regulations, you could rotate or relocate the band shell.
Mhm.
However, you can't make it smaller or larger. You get what
And
you
we
get. did
changed that so that you can make it smaller.
Smaller.
That's now in the
So this-
regulations.
And then this is why this next part comes in. So if you had enough space to have accessibility ramp, I'd be okay with that. Looking at the current shell, there appears to be enough space at the front to build a ramp inside the footprint of the shell. Well, how can you do that?
Well, so I mean, what he's saying is
Make
that
it Smaller and you'd have,
so
I'm
instead of
very
this
confused.
flat platform, part of it is a
But it
ramp.
couldn't go out any further.
So I think what he's
Doesn't that-
saying
within
is drill
the-
down and put a ramp inside
Yeah.
the footprint.
Yeah.
So it's flat here and then it drops down and
Yeah.
has the ramp built
There
right
could be a
in.
band shell left, I'm just telling you.
No.
Yes.
You know how wide, it's not like you're putting a
It would be a
10-inch
band
wide
shell.
or 12-inch wide ramp.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Actually, I
well,
don't think it's
anyhow.
that ridiculous. I'm not saying I agree with it, but it's what, about a foot step up?
So
Yeah.
you need
So you need
12
12
feet.
10-foot ramp.
Yeah,
Five-
that band shell is a lot
By the
bigger
way,
than
five
12 feet.
foot wide, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
The
you
band
can-
shell's 30
you can
feet
do it
diameter,
whether you
right?
like the design or not. It's feasible.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to, that's
Would
what I'm
take away
trying
a
to
lot
figure
of
out.
the area.
Yeah, and what happens to that foundation for the issues that it has? Good, bad, don't know.
Well, that's why you need to hire a structural engineer.
Well, you would have to tell them you want to put an ADA ramp inside of it.
And you need to find
You'd be
out
better off
whether,
bringing a grader.
whether the people in the town want
I know.
a the pavilion instead of a band shell.
No, and
I mean, I don't know if you've gone out to find that out.
Not until
I think we were working on, weren't we working on trying to figure out what it would cost to fix the band shell
yeah,
compared to what a new one would and what
That's
one
fine.
was
Yeah,
more
if it's a-
economical.
Fix the band shell if it has
so you
5
could-
issues compared to
Right.
building a
something new.
4 posts with roof structure that has a concrete base.
That was just, we just wanted to see which one was more economical,
Yes.
to keep the band shell and fix it? Or is it gonna be a lot of money and do you just start from scratch somewhere else? And get rid of the band shell?
On the
Yeah,
plateau.
but-
What costs more money?
Band
as
shell, not-
this
You
town
also will
doesn't
want to find
spend
out what the
money.
town wants,
Well,
because
yes.
that was the question.
But
with
we
the
want
town
to
center.
give them all of the information. We want to say, okay, so if we keep the band shell, this is how much it's gonna cost if we fix it.
Mhm.
If we get rid of the band shell, this is what it's gonna cost. Because right now, this town is very interested in money
Mhm.
and not spending it stupidly.
Yeah, so find out by all means how much it's gonna cost to fix the band shell. That's your next step. Anyway,
We apologize. We're just trying to take everyone that's, had stakeholders, all the stakeholders, when they brought their suggestions to us, we're trying to figure out all of the stakeholders and trying to make everybody happy. And someone's not gonna be happy.
right,
You know what I mean? Accessibility,
of course.
covered space for picnics. and-
Paving over Brown's Court.
Yeah, and we really haven't had any, when you asked before, outreach about Volunteers Green, because we don't know what.
We don't have a
want.
plan
We don't
yet.
have any sort of plan that we can even
Right, well,
talk
it's
about.
it's
except
always a
the
chicken and
few-
egg problem.
Sort of true. We
because-
haven't had as much, I would say, as with Brown's Court yet, but we haven't not
But
had
nothing to
outreach.
present, yes, we've talked with a lot of neighbors.
We've talked with a lot of people,
about
we've
playground
posted on, we've
before.
Oh,
had discussions.
lots of
at this
outreach
meeting,
for
then a
the
lot
other
of-
parts,
So I want to be
but not
clear
this part.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
that we
we've
haven't had
talked-
as much outreach as Brown's Court because we presented that plan and we had open meeting about that plan.
You're still getting outreach about that.
That's not our
Have they
responsibility.
been in a
There's
coma?
never enough.
Have
outreach,
they
but-
been in a
yes.
coma? No.
Please come. to
Well, anyhow,
meetings.
Well, that's what we say when people come at the last minute and say
Mhm.
blah, blah, blah. So anyway. yeah,
Thank
there's
you
never
so
enough
much.
Outreach.
I would just like
Read
to
the
say,
document, look at the changes that are
And
acceptable.
I'll make sure the entire committee.
Yeah, I
gets
just
it.
sent them.
Okay, you are on it, girl. You've got them in your box.
You have a lot of questions that you haven't asked yet, but that's fine. Maybe you'll come to them, for instance, about the fence, about the playground.
Well, I think we're gonna get.
These
So,
are the-
so stay here, because I have lots of.
Yeah.
Questions about
So
that.
the fence, there would be a fence allowed around the playground, even though it is a new structure.
Mhm.
why is that?
But it needs to be in the footprint
Of the playground.
of the playground, and the playground, the structures in the playground right now are not including the chips outside the structures, if you see what I mean. The
Right.
footprint is the structures.
And the fence has to be within that.
Yeah, so a
footprint?
kid can fall
So
on
the
it and puncture
Fence have to
themselves
be,
through,
well,
but you
so
know.
it's gonna have to be smaller.
So the
be
fall
small.
points,
Wait, what has to be?
Has to be
what has
teeny,
be
this
smaller?
big.
Playground.
Playground.
We have to
well,
make it
that would
smaller?
comply with state, would it? You have to have what, a 6-foot fall zone?
Well, that's
for
what I'm
each-
saying here, so should I do this now?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, and I
You'll be
can,
getting a slide in there,
no, I can't,
No.
not too tall.
Don't bother doing anything. So
If I could just
Can she
say,
ask you questions?
I'm sorry, do you have?
Well, according to what Tyler had sent, his measurements were the exact structure, like the exact, went around the exact piece of every equipment.
Oh.
So there's no protective area around there. There's no, you have to have a bubble around each piece of equipment. You have to have you have to be able to walk from one place to the other place. You have to have ground area that children play on.
Like
and
we do
so-
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
and
have
so
to have
it's
that
like-
fall zone.
And a buffer on the outside.
And a fence, yeah, with enough space between. So that playground would be, what's there now would be maybe a third of that size if we went with that exact interpretation. So when he said only the structure, I mean, he's meaning only the physical metal posts, right?
You
He's
need
not talking
circulation
about the
space.
extra protective, because when all the playground designs look, then they looked at the wood chip area. That is as the playground area. And that's
Right.
what Tyler told me in December last year. That's what I was supposed to share with the reps. So, yeah, so anyhow, he didn't include
The
some things that
circulation.
the
space.
circulation, right, the protect, and what they call it right in here, it's the ground space and then the protective area. That's what all the playground designs called that. So he didn't include any protective area whatsoever. And also there were just some minor things like he didn't, there was a tether ball and a sandbox there that just haven't been put back after one of the floods. So that should be included in that area, I would think. There should be, I mean, part of when you design a playground, you make play spaces between the structures. Children have to run back and forth between the structures. Right now, I mean, here's one play, here's the other one, it
You
just,
couldn't
it
run
doesn't
in
make
front of
sense
a
at all.
swing.
Do you think
That's
it
a
would
safety
help
So there's-
Tyler to meet with the playground rep?
Well,
No.
I've asked him to look at these
No.
designs. He doesn't know. And so also then the other things like the benches that are in the playground, there would be no space for that.
Well, the
He's
benches
not
are gonna
giving
be
us
allowed.
credit for anything that was there
That's
that got taken out by the flood.
but
We've
what-
allowed for incidental structures, which are picnic tables, benches,
Okay, well, he's
Tether
not,
ball?
like that.
Certainly not gonna fit inside a fenced playground.
Yeah, they're only. those
well, that
together
would
you
all
can
be
run
part of a
into-
playground, wouldn't you think?
No, those can be anywhere.
If I'm
Those
sorry.
can be anywhere.
Okay, I'm just.
If I could just make a point, Jeannie, which I think will preclude a lot of this conversation. And that is that you guys should be thinking about what it is you want and what the community wants. We're doing it backwards.
Which you need
You're
to find
going-
out.
you're
by
running
the
it
way,
through a
what the
funnel
community wants.
Of a few people who have interpreted the regulations in the strictest sense and with the most conservative perspective and come up with this very narrow scope of what they're telling you can do versus you guys assessing what it is the community wants and then saying, okay, this is what we want. What do we need to do to allow that we want to be built there? And maybe the community really doesn't want anything and then we'll just turn it all into lawn. I don't think so. You guys probably don't think so. But we need to find out. And then once we have that information, then you can go back and say, okay, Planning Commission, this is what the community wants. Is it legal to zone that? Within the confines of FEMA, not the FEMA, and then the state, and then the Planning Commission, and then the interpretation of our current zoning administrator to get down to here. Start here, find out what the community wants and where that fits, and then make us meet it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. That's what we thought the purpose of the summit was
Yeah,
that
and
these
there-
areas that
Exactly,
already-
There's
exactly.
lots of
We're
different
wasting our
opinions
time.
here.
Well, I'll just
So,
say, like, with
various
these
opinions.
measurements, like, it seems like in this round of requirements, we've actually gotten more strict than we first started talking to Tyler, who was including the whole, area with the, wood
It's like they
chips, and he was
change every
including
time.
being able
Yep.
to move
Yeah.
that. way back.
So,
I'm sorry.
you know, he's a factor that we have to deal with, obviously.
It's gotten more and
He's
more
not
strict
on
as we've gone
the same
along.
page as a lot of other people.
Yeah.
Gary,
As you can
So I'm
imagine.
just wondering, I know nothing about that letter, but I wonder if what he means by, he's just measuring the equipment.
Exactly. He's got,
So just the equipment might be the limit of just the equipment, but he's not
He
saying
says that
the land
the fence
around
has to
it.
stay within that.
no, in bold face, to be clear, I'm not counting the chipped area outside where I measured towards the square footage for playground equipment. Then he has each of the measurements, and then it says, that means that any play equipment and safety fencing has to fit inside the above mentioned square footage. You can put as many things in the box as you want to put in there,
All right.
but that's all the square footage you have. If you want to extend chips or other materials outside of this area, you can, provided none of the play structures are out of the box.
Right,
So
so
like
the
he's
6
almost
foot,
saying two different. you know,
well, the
like it's
6 foot on the ground is fine, as long as there's no structures in there. That's what he's saying.
All right.
Well, the
Saying-
fence is gonna be in there
Well,
outside of that.
Tyler has his hand up. We-
And we can, yeah.
Tyler, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was trying to catch a little bit of this here. I'm solo daddy at the moment, so it was dinner time. So I would try and tune in and just catch a little bit of the conversation. So I do apologize for missing a good chunk of it, but I'm happy to try and I didn't quite prepare to be in this meeting tonight, but given that it's given the topic of conversation, if people are willing to grant me the grace of trying to do this a little off the cuff, I'm happy to try and answer any questions or try and clear up some stuff if that's of any use. I also know it's later in your agenda and I don't want to necessarily drag this out or anything. Like I said, I was just tuning in for more of my own interest in the subject than anything else. So
You want
Well, yeah,
to
so,
identify yourself so he knows.
so hi, Tyler, it's Jeannie Agner. And
hey, Jeannie.
so I've been working with some of the playground reps
Mhm.
and had a couple designs earlier before we have talked about the plateau. So then I see that the measurements that you did and some of your notes, and I was just kind of confused. So
Sure.
so you have the structures and only the structures, the actual equipment measured correctly?
That is correct. So what I tried to do and that's what makes this so difficult, is that this is really, playground equipment really isn't envisioned like neatly kind of in the FHOD regs. Like really, they're really more geared towards like, 4 walls and a roof sort of stuff. But
Right.
clearly per our definitions, those things are structures. So what I was struggling with is how do I measure this, right? How do I say what's there? Not because again, and I did it the way I did it, trying to give you guys actually more flexibility, because to do a 1-to-1 replacement of taking that exact same configuration of playground equipment, finding a new manufacturer who can make it exactly the same and putting it back in there struck me as pretty onerous. But I also have to strike the balance between the fact that technically none of that stuff is supposed to be down there. It's all legally non-conforming. It does not supposed to exist. It does. So what I'm trying to do is kind of put the round peg in the square hole as best I can, where it's like, okay, how do we allow for maintenance on this stuff with the understanding is that it's not like a house, right? You can't just go put new siding on it. That manufacturer might even be out of business, So that was kind of my thought process behind it. Was what I'm trying to avoid is getting a situations where because what I'm trying to let people do is anything that you can fit inside of that box, I'll let you do it, more or less.
But Mike, so you didn't include any of the protective area around. any
Right,
of
because if I did that, then you could potentially put more structures, and if I measured it counting the wood chips, right, that's a lot more space than where the actual play structures themselves are located. So by doing it the other way, by the wood chips, it would actually end up expanding what's there. So I did say in there, you could extend wood chips as far out as the eye can see, as far as I'm concerned, from that playground equipment. It's just the equipment itself has to fit into that box.
Plus the fence.
Plus the fence, which
Yeah,
is-
but-
And I understand that. Like I said, I'm trying to do the best I can to interpret this in a way that, you know, because otherwise, if I was to really interpret this very literally, you have to go 1-to-1, put the exact same configuration back up
But
there.
even if you did, you would still have to, you have to have a protective area around each one of those pieces. This is a playground. You have to have, you know,
Right.
a certain distance between each piece of equipment. You have to have certain cushioning between each piece of equipment.
Yeah,
So
and none of that is lost on
the
me.
wood chips or whatever, just call it any, whether it's a mat or a wood chip or that, the engineered wood fiber. That is the protective area around there. And that just has to be, that is part of the playground. You can't have a playground without that.
Right. But you have to make a distinction, and I don't doubt that, right? But you also have to realize that it's my job to interpret and read these regulations literally. The wood chips don't count as structures. The play equipment does. So
your
what I'm
position
trying to do is to try and,
last 6 months.
you know, give you guys that flexibility so that way you're not pigeonholed with the exact same configuration that you guys have. It may very well be limiting. You know, I'm doing the best I can in terms of, you know, trying to give you guys some latitude while doing my job, which is to literally interpret the regs. You know, I'm agnostic as to what you guys want to do or put there or allow. That's not my call. That's the planning commission. That's your guys' community. And then once the rules are written, I interpret them as best I can. I'm the baseball umpire, right? I call balls and strikes. I don't get to define what those things are. I just read it and say, okay, is it a ball or is it a strike? And
So
go from
Tyler,
there.
You previously defined for us a structure to be this concept of these stacked rocks, right? And you
Mhm.
explained to us then that you felt like that the structure of the playground meant that you had to have that wood chip around, and therefore you defined to us previously that the structure of the playground would be including all of the wood chips and the benches that already exist in that space, because they all would count as the structure required of a playground. So that is
I
not
think that was, you know, prior to our conversation. And again, this is why I generally try and avoid hypotheticals, right? Because it's very hard to talk about stuff, trying to recall conversations I had 6 months ago. And no offense to you or anybody else in this room, I've had the same conversation probably about 7 or 8 different times with about 7 or 8 different people. So it's hard for me to kind of necessarily keep track of exactly what I said then. What I have been trying to do consistently is to say, like, okay, give you guys the latitude to kind of do is that I don't expect you guys to be able to find a piece of playground equipment that's going to look exactly like the piece of playground equipment that we have there. So provided that I can fit it in this box again, and I had to sit down and it was more conceptual. I sat down the other day because again, I had the conversation again with somebody else, and I know it's hard for you guys to come up with the design if you don't know what space you had to work with. So I tried to give you guys how I would measure it. So I gave you at least a foot on either side all the way around the play equipment. And then I actually gave you a little bit more. There's that where the main thing is. I essentially, instead of following the exact pattern, I rounded it out to more or less a square around the big one, just so that way it was just easier to administer. So, and again, I don't care what you guys want to allow down there. That's not my job. I don't have a dog in that fight. It's my job to read the regs literally, as is noted in section 8.1, and say, okay, what is this? What box does it fit into? Is it allowed? Is it not allowed? And go from there. You know, that's not as
Excuse
to
me,
whether or not it
Tyler?
should or shouldn't isn't my purview. It's your guys's, you know, you as a
Tyler.
community need to decide that.
Thank you. So your interpretation of everything that you've presented to everybody so far, just to be clear, is your interpretation of the current and proposed Richmond zoning regulations. You're not basing your interpretation on FEMA regulations, correct?
I have so how it works is FEMA sets the floor, right? municipalities
Right,
can
but-
and often are encouraged by FEMA to go in excess of that.
Right, but FEMA sets the floor and everything you've told us tonight and in previous conversations has been based on current or proposed Richmond zoning regulations, not FEMA regulations.
That's
Correct.
correct. I read and interpret our flood regulation.
Okay, so everything he's saying is based on what we have written right now and the extremely limited proposed regulations that are going to a hearing next month. You guys don't have to live by those rules.
So Tyler, we could hypothetically come up with exactly what we need based on, we don't want to make it any bigger than what we have. We want to just be able to do the same exact thing with the wood chips that sits there now and just put up a fence by the edge of the wood chips. So if we came up with that verbiage for this hearing, you could make that happen?
I would interpret the regulations literally as they are written and approved.
You can't.
That's
We
the
have to
best,
get them
that's
to
the best
change
I
it,
got for you.
Right?
Yeah,
It's we'd have to
they
have,
have. to
you
change.
guys
Right,
have
thank
to
you,
change.
Tyler.
Okay, Tyler, thank you so much. So
Yeah.
I think, well, thank you. Never mind.
So
Yeah.
we need to we need to have community outreach. We need to see what the community wants to
Yeah,
do.
yep.
Then we need to go back to these guys, also attend the meeting and then say, this is what we need to do to get to there, the
Yeah,
changes.
we're not asking for anything bigger than what we have, and Jeannie and Mark and the Recreation Committee did it just exactly.
Yeah.
Right,
And
I
went with
think the
what
fence
exactly
was the
Tyler told
problem
me
for
to hit
him.
on
Is
it.
the problem.
Yeah.
Fence
right.
is the problem
Yeah.
because the fence is a new structure. The
Right.
fence is
Yeah.
not existing.
Right.
It's not, we tried originally to define that as part of the playground,
Yeah.
part of a playground that required a
Yeah.
fence.
Yeah.
And
Can it be playground?
That's a
and
new-
safety equipment?
that's a
Yeah.
new,
Yeah,
that was a
so
new
it's the
addition.
Safety equipment.
Right. And so when I
Built in and safety equipment?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so when I originally talked to Tyler to be able to go to the playground reps, he said the footprint is the footprint of the wood chips because that's the safety
Right.
area around it. That was considered, he considered that the structure of the playground.
Well,
But-
yeah.
Right,
His,
so-
his interpretation of structure is kind
Yeah.
of different, like we originally tried to have a definition of playground in there that included everything,
Protected area.
including a fence.
Mhm.
And he was not interested in that concept of there being a fence as a new structure, if it's a new structure. For instance, if you put a baseball diamond, if you moved one of the baseball diamonds with their fences that already exist, those are structures that already exist. So they could be moved. So,
There's those wooden beam borders around there. That's just a really
Pulling the
short
wood,
fence.
yeah.
We just needed to.
I
make
mean,
it
it
taller.
may be that we have to work out how
Yeah.
to,
Right.
I mean, with his interpretation or what he sent, that would be, I think it's less than half the square footage that's already there.
Not acceptable.
in terms of the,
The playground that's there right now, if you count the whole area.
Yeah.
Is, well, what the.
Not
playground
including the
rep, when
swings
he
and
went,
stuff.
not including, no,
Swing,
yeah, not including the
the
swings,
tetherball.
not including, whether the tether ball and the
if you
sand.
said you were
parks
gonna leave them there.
Yeah, so, yeah, so not moving the swings up above, because there's just no space. They need now with the regs so much more space behind them. But, so according to this design that I have earlier, the square footage, the ground space was gonna be 4,471 square feet. The protective area, 5,679 square feet. He says that we have 2,000 some hundred square feet to work with. That includes putting the fence inside that box. So, I mean, I gave all the playground reps that info because that's what he told me you know,
Really
earlier.
a very minimalistic.
And it's
playground.
really, the design is as close you could get, you know, I mean, the space. This is not this was a design from when it was gonna be down below. Now he's reconfiguring to be able to see what design could fit up there, but I had given him the information, you know, that it's within the footprint of what's there. So that's what I'm.
Right, well, we're working with some long-standing definitions in the zoning regulations about
Yeah.
structures, what they are.
Yeah.
You know, what counts as a structure, what
Yeah.
isn't a structure,
Well, would
which
it be a
affects the
structure
whole
since it has
ordinance, but with,
the
you
4x4s? Doesn't? wouldn't
Yeah,
it be a
the beams
The
that are,
beams,
the
the 4x4
four by fours that are
beams.
around to keep the wood chips from.
in.
And by the way, the playground people do not like you to call those wood chips. That's engineered wood fiber, very specially designed for a
Right.
certain amount of bounce.
Okay.
But there are 4x4s. I'm not sure what they are all around the whole perimeter of the playground to keep the wood chips from
Right.
migrating out. So
And do you have room up there to put this size of playground and a bathroom
what-
and the
that's what we're
band shell?
trying to figure out.
Chris Haggerty is working on that. Or he was from the summit.
No, he's not.
No, he was at the summit. I'm not sure if it was Josh or somebody asked him what the space was on the top.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
but
have
he's
the
not working on
elevations.
any design or
Oh,
anything.
no, not, he's not working on design, but,
We need to get somebody to work on design.
you know,
Well,
Kara.
right, when the regs are decided.
Based on this discussion right now, and you guys have already been taking some public comment from before, from all your meetings. The ARPA committee took public comment from all theirs. The ARPA committee did a survey as well. There's been a lot of public outreach on what they wanted to see happen at the park. Based on the proposed planning commission changes for the zoning regulations and Tyler's interpretation, it's going to be a smaller playground.
Sure.
If you move it at all. If you move it even where it is, rebuild it where it is, it's gonna be, if you have to put up a fence, it's gonna be a smaller playground. So my question is the planning commission really gonna go and have this public hearing when they've heard from this committee? And the whole purpose of the planning commission changing the floodway regulations was driven by this committee's request. Why are we moving forward with a regulation that we know is not going to meet our needs? And why is it not being tabled until your needs are, like Mark had said, define what you're looking for? Because we were working in the wrong direction from Mark's comments. It's not, that was very reasonable what he was saying, is figure out what you want. And then we'll look at doing the regulations around that if it mitigates the flood risk and does a better job in the floodway than all the existing structures are right now. Why are we moving forward with a planning commission public hearing, which was for the purpose of this committee, if it's not going to meet the needs of this committee?
So at the summit, the needs that we heard were to move the playground onto the plateau
Mhm.
and the restroom onto the plateau.
Mhm.
Those were the needs that we heard.
Right, but I'm just,
So we haven't heard anything
No,
from you
the-
since then. The
right.
Planning Commission has not heard anything
Pavilion
from
was
you
discussed.
since then.
because we're,
Pavilion was sort of discussed, but there was
Pavilion
no
with the
indication at that time whether people wanted the band shell. You know, there's a contingent of
Right, we
people in this
haven't-
town
we're
who
not-
feel that they want the
Yeah.
band shell.
I
There's
think
a
the comment that you
contingent.
made was that you
people who
would get
don't.
involved in that decision.
What?
The comment that you made specifically when it was brought up is that you wouldn't
Exactly.
get involved in that decision. So it was brought up because your comment back was, I'm not gonna get
but
involved.
still, no matter what
But
it is,
that
it
was
has to be
not
on
at
It was
the
brought up.
summit.
Yes, it was.
It was not a request for the
Mhm.
planning commission to work on a
I think the
pavilion.
whole thing was a request of the planning commission, and to say that it's what you're proposing reaches the needs of this committee by saying if we disregard the pavilion concept and we just talk about the playground and the bathroom, it's not if we have to make we've just gone over this. If we have to make the playground a third of the size, that's not what this committee was asking to do, was to make a tiny playground. We weren't asking to make a bigger one either. But
Mark,
Just
what do
then
you
it's
have
not
to
meeting.
say?
what
Well,
we asked
you
to
can
do.
come to the hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think.
Clearly, you should come
Yeah.
with your evidence and your,
Yeah.
you
Let
know.
them
So,
Sure.
I'd like to hear from what Mark has to say, because he was gonna chime in earlier. I saw.
Yeah, I think we're spinning our wheels.
I know we are.
Wasting,
Yeah, we are.
we're wasting time even talking about this. The reason why I wanted to move to a hearing is because I knew there wouldn't be any progress in the planning commission on moving towards anything until we got back from you guys and got pushed back from the select board. So frankly, in my view, right now, I just soon get it out of the planning commission's hand because I don't personally agree with what the planning commission's doing, but that's what the planning commission has decided they want to do. And so I think that's a mistake, which is why I voted to move it along and get it away from us, get it to you guys, get it to the select board where what I think are reasonable and practical approaches to this issue can be dealt with, because they're not going to be dealt with in the planning commission without a clean directive from you guys, yes, but especially from the select board. We got to hear from the powers that be. You know, we serve at their request. They're going to tell us, okay, yes, no, whatever. But
Well-
us talking about it in the planning commission
that's the point of
And
the
it
public hearing.
was
is
extremely
for people to
abbreviated.
come and talk to the planning commission.
Right, but
there.
then the
That's the
last thing
point.
I want to do is have it then come back to the planning commission without any other further input and better clarification from the community, from the Three Parks Commission, and from the select board.
That's the
I don't
point of
want to
the public
waste any
hearing.
time.
Mhm.
Oh, yes,
Planning
that'll be
commission
good that
public
we can
hearing.
present the
Bring your
very
arguments and your
limited
outreach
approach,
and
but
what
basically we're gonna,
your
I don't know what we're
proposal.
gonna hear. That's why I wanted to move it.
So, I mean, it's good that.
No sense
we
having
got
another
to talk
PC
tonight
meeting.
Because we know we have ADA issues,
Yep,
we have playground size
so
issues.
put all your issues together, put,
Yeah.
you know,
I got lots
Oh,
of
honey,
issues.
it could be a
You don't
long
know all the
night.
issues.
bring the issues. That is the process.
It's October
that This is
16th,
done.
the hearing.
Correct.
I don't know what kind of timeline you guys are at. It would probably be good to get some sort of community input before that.
Yeah, you should do
But I mean,
outreach to
we've
find out
already
what people
gotten.
want.
No.
Yes, I
We
know, but
we
more
need to-
detail.
we need to
Okay.
do
And there's a
something.
Yeah,
lot,
not just
there's
the
still that
people who
debate
want you
about,
to do this.
We need to like,
do you want a
The other
pavilion?
people
Do you
out
want
there.
a band
Right.
shell? Do you want to move the bathroom? Let's find out really what
That's-
the community
Exactly, and that's why I
is
just
really standing at.
thought we needed at least to have some drawings to even be able to say,
But the
here's what
problem is
we're,
we can't make, they
here's what
won't.
we're talking
drawings
about.
if They have to go by all the
Yeah,
standards.
yeah, and
Nothing
I just don't want
exists.
to ask these playground reps anymore for info.
No, it's
if
the
we
people,
Don't know
the
what.
Richmond
Bring what you
residents
have
is what
existing.
who you want to ask.
But we've
Yes,
asked them.
but what, you know, it's like,
Do you want to move
Do
the
you want
playground
this-
up onto the
Yes.
plateau?
They
You
do.
know,
yeah.
Do you want to keep it where it is?
not
I don't-
just the people who use the
Right.
playground.
No, we've put front porch forums out, we've put things in the Times Inc. We've done all of this already
Have you
and have
had
heard.
People come to your
Yes,
meetings?
people
You've
come to our
invited
meetings.
people
We've
to come
invited
and
individuals
stuff.
from all these different groups to come to our meetings.
Yeah.
We've invited.
It's
people
very
on Front Porch
hard.
Forum, So
They've
I don't really
written
know what
letters.
more.
Outreach
So
is
let's
very
do what
hard,
we
as you can
had
see.
talked about
from
doing
the
before,
pickleball
and do
question.
a
It's
Not
very
even
hard to
addressed.
get
We're not
people.
the middle
addressing that.
school and
Yeah,
invite the public and
Yeah.
say, all right, this is what's going on. This is how much it costs to replace this playground every time it floods. What are your thoughts? Do you want to move it up? Do you want to leave it as? This is move the bathroom. This is what we're up against.
And do your cost analysis of the band
Band
shell.
shell.
You know, do people?
Right.
that's
Well, I
why
don't know if we have enough time for the
Sorry.
band shell cost
Scared
and
me.
the output, but outreach.
there's nothing there.
That's why.
The engineers about the
Yeah.
band shell instantly.
Carrie, do you want to present to us?
No.
Did you?
Gary,
get
will
it?
you talk with me about the size of
pull
the
it up?
playground and explain?
said
to
no.
me
I
square
thought it
footage
meant
at
no.
some point?
Oh,
I'll
I
try.
mean, how to, yeah,
No, I think
I mean,
you've got
I mean,
the
you
idea.
yeah, I know, I'm just.
Take
because
it.
I have
This is
to-
a full design.
oh, it is.
Yes, he's providing a full design.
Oh, so. it
That
is a
then
full-
would be bid out.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Tyler, you have your hand up again, or is it still up? I can't.
No,
tell.
it's up again. And just so everybody knows, and and I do apologize if anything that I've said to individuals in the past has led to any confusion or made anybody else's life difficult. That's not, not what I wanted to do. And that's generally why I try and avoid having hypothetical conversations, is because it does lead to, it leads to problems like this. And I am always more than willing to show up at any meeting that I can go get to. So if people want to know what I think about something, you might not necessarily like what I think about it, but I'm more than willing to, as long as you give me a little notice, I'm more than happy to carve out some time to be there. So I would much rather have you guys ask me whatever questions that you have about how I interpret things directly, and I can, answer those questions as best I can and go from there. I'm always willing to do that. My contact information, everything's on the website. Reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to carve out time to meet with you guys on the record, in public, doesn't matter.
Thank you. Okay. We should move because we're supposed to be done in 12 minutes.
Yeah. So anyway, get it together that what you want to say at this.
Okay, Tyler, will you be at the meeting October 16th?
Yes, I will.
Okay, perfect. All right, and Gary, you
Virginia.
prefer not to present?
Tonight, I don't think anybody's listening to anybody else.
We're just like so full, it's like, oh my God, where to begin?
Well, I just don't even
It
think we
might
know
be
what we
nice
can
if you
do
guys
and how
do
to
public
do.
outreach to present there so that the community can hear.
Can you
Your
define a
ideas
public
about-
outreach? Because if
about
we
it.
posted it saying Gary was gonna
no.
present a plan, so just define it for us
There's
so we can do
never
that.
Enough public outreach.
I don't-
and
I
it's
don't disagree
very
with you,
Hard.
But for
do
you to
public
keep saying that we
outreach.
haven't done it.
Well, you have to just keep trying. You have to keep writing little things
Okay.
up and getting
Yep.
people to come to talk to you.
We have,
And
okay, thank
have
you.
to, yeah.
Get the backing from the select board,
But we
What
can't make people
backing?
come.
have them push the issue.
People use
It's something that needs to be decided.
We can't get people to come to.
Well, we had
planning.
talked,
They
we
come at
had
the
talked
last minute
about a meeting
they
at
wanna
the middle
shut down
school
what
So
we
with
wanna
design.
present.
Keep asking,
We can't
but
do
we can't make
designs,
people you want to
don't
come.
have
Try different
designs,
ways.
But
and,
we
you
have
know,
the
that's all you
information
can
and
do.
we can
So,
hand out stuff to the elementary school kids and invite the parents and the community in and say, what, this is
But then
what's
you're-
going on. This
You're
is
in
what our
charge.
But
pushback
listen,
is.
then you're still
this-
getting the same people you're saying we
But at
are
least-
already representing. Because we already have that represented. You're saying we're not getting everybody represented.
No,
But this, so a lot
Do
of,
we want
that's
to
what
move
a lot of
on?
people are
Yeah,
saying.
I think we need to move
You
on.
want to talk, Mark, about the recreational director?
I can be really brief.
Okay, let's go. We like brief.
It'd be a good idea. I don't think the select board has done anything with it yet. They're going to, I think possibly propose a position in the, next town budget for at least some sort of limited scope of a position. And then hopefully we'll be able to resurrect a rec committee.
Yeah.
Which would be great for every one of you to be on. If you've got the,
Been
if
there,
you've got the
done that.
fortitude for it, but yeah, and then
There won't be
the,
any
a new rec
controversy.
committee. Working with a town officer, not just necessarily the town officer supporting the rec committee. But my vision is more of a rec committee supporting the town officer, who can then make things happen and coordinate with people and use the committee to improve connections with other committees and accomplish things and do fundraising and volunteer drives, things like that. That's ultimately my vision. And honestly, I haven't checked with them this summer since I met with them and made those propositions.
Am I
So
dreaming this, or was someone gonna come up with a job description?
I did.
You
I
did,
gave
okay.
it to them. It was very limited, but yes,
Okay,
it was.
okay,
And
perfect.
we did, I should
We had
say.
input.
I thought you would be
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah.
Did you get anybody express any interest in the rec committee?
In the rec
When-
committee,
yeah, when-
being a member? Yeah, no.
Yeah, none.
No.
Okay.
It'd be nice,
We'll take some planning commissioners too, by the way.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if you don't want to be on the rec committee, you can be a planning commissioner.
Well, I'm
Please.
learning a lot, but I don't know if I want to learn anymore.
I've learned a lot.
Positions available all over.
I
Okay,
didn't even know there was a difference between floodway, floodplain, flood zone until anyhow. Okay,
all right, so I think,
Thank you, Virginia.
yes.
Thank you.
oh,
Welcome.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
We'll see you
It's
all.
So much to think about but you'll definitely see us on the 16th.
Yes, and as much as we disagree, I really appreciate you coming tonight
You're welcome.
and presenting, you know, I think it's more important that
Let me
all the
know
perspectives.
if you have any questions.
Yeah.
We're available. You know, we haven't heard from you guys since Summit, so.
Yes,
Well, I
in
thought we were
touch.
just supposed to be waiting to see what
Yeah.
was coming up. So
Yeah.
we
now we need to
we're all
fine
trying.
tune some
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Okay, summary of any comments, responses
Mark.
received from the Front Porch Forum posting and how to respond. Just really briefly, I spoke to Josh and Josh said that regarding Brown's Court, it is not in our purview anymore. It is not up to us. It is up to the select board. If they want to respond, we do not respond. Josh told me that after I personally called one gentleman to say, do you have time to have coffee? I'd like to talk with you. And
Yeah,
he wrote me right back and said, I'd like to, I'm going out of town. I'll call you next week. I never heard from him. I think and then I did a little digging and I found out that, par for the course. So I've never heard from him, and I told Josh, I said, I'm sorry, I reached out just to let him know and give him all these documents if he wanted to see them. And Josh says, that's fine, but you know, anything that's gone before the select board, they voting on it, it's not your domain anymore. And I'm like, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so we're not supposed to respond.
No response. Okay.
Two things about those.
About
Okay,
from,
but-
about
Has been approved.
Right.
that have been approved. So
Yes,
the
correct.
one about, Brown's Court and anything about the round church, we're not supposed to respond. It's
Correct.
all theirs, because they've
Yeah.
approved it, I mean, like almost most of the work at the round church, except for the concrete slab and the picnic tables has been done.
Yes.
And I just want to do a shout out to Jeannie. I went by one day and saw her working so hard on the benches and they look brand new. They're amazing. And thank you. They are amazing. It was great. There were so many people that kept coming over and these look great. And she's doing all the work. I'm like, oh my
Well, once
God.
you look at them, they were.
It was amazing. They just
Sure.
look beautiful. So
Documented how to
Yes.
maintain them. So
Yes,
the town
I have.
put it in
I
their
do.
Budget to maintain.
I put
them.
all the steps and I told Josh as soon as I.
Coming back every year to do it, right?
No, but I have a plan. I'm gonna recruit bench buddies or. Something.
They're
And,
beautiful.
and Gary, or both of you, so the one bench that's down in the parking lot area,
Joyce's.
okay, Joyce, and that is in the Historical Society. And that one's not very old yet, is it?
No.
I
it's
didn't
just
look at it
same
to see if that
Same
one-
age as Tim Whiteford's been.
Oh, well, then it probably needs some scrubby too.
I think those oak
I'll ask
trees
John if he'll join me.
really drip, something in an oak, I think is creating a lot of the problems there.
That, because the lichen was so bad on the one over there, that was
Yeah.
awful.
But
Okay, well, I'm still gonna look at that one even if, I mean, as long as the Historical Society. says that.
and then our next
So,
item.
Yeah, yeah.
Any next steps for the committee on Round Church Green, Browns Court Park, and or any updates about projects underway?
So I think that one is just, it's,
The
that's
RF,
out of-
okay, help
that's
me
out
out, and
done.
I can't remember, the RFP is due when?
September 16th,
September 16th.
which is
Okay.
Monday.
Just briefly, I put a bug in Tess's ear to contact Duncan because I just wanted to make sure that the people that bid on the projects
oh,
make sure they saw it so that they could just submit their documentation again. So I asked Tess if she would be the lead on that and just talk with whomever, whether it was Josh. Well, she found out it wasn't Josh, it was Duncan. And Duncan took all the information from her.
mhm.
So hopefully they knew it was out to bid. If they didn't see it and those people are bidding on the projects, because that was my fear that the people that had done all the work for us didn't see the project. I know it goes, John, what's the name of that document?
Works in progress.
It goes out in a document called Works in Progress. And I just want,
Assuming. I don't know what anybody did, but that would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a document that all contractor companies get, and it's all the projects in Chittenden County. Is it broken up by county?
By county, it's the whole state.
Yeah.
Actually, New England. Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that the people Tess had been working with had
got
it, so Duncan
Sure.
said he would take care of it.
Yep.
So let's hope it happens, but they're all due September 16th. I plan on being here on the 16th, if I can, when Josh opens the bids, just to see who got it, who bid, what the bids came in at. I mean, I more than anything. I
So
think
you
it's
can't let it go, even though you just said we're supposed to.
I,
let it all
well,
go.
no, I think,
But
no,
to
that's
be
a
clear, the
public,
money of it impacts us, because if it has
if
to,
it's higher, it
that's
takes
the only
away
thing,
from
not
vouchers.
who, like, I don't care.
Thank you.
But
Thanks.
we did get a specific amount approved, and if it has to,
Yes. Okay.
then
Gotcha.
other pieces have to.
Yeah.
And
And
just
I
so
will come
that
back to us. on
everyone knows, and
that
I had
piece.
to ask Kendra, and she went into her database, but so we had $325,000 left from all the projects that have been done, ordered, completed, and then
Estimated.
estimated. And then the playground was going to be 100, the quote originally was 191,000. Does that
Mhm.
sound right? June?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna say 200,000.
yeah,
that's what I was saying,
191. So
That wasn't with a fence.
But that was no,
yeah,
no.
that was
fence,
without
no
the
just-
fence.
oh,
So
no.
I just want to let you know where we stand. So September 16th is kind of a big day.
For the pickleball courts.
Yeah, for the pickleball courts.
Yeah.
So
It is in the town's responsibility. It's definitely in the select board's hands. But I think it's our job to kind of follow what they're doing, and like you did, to make sure that contractor who had worked with Jeannie and I met with Duncan and showed him where we wanted the concrete slab. So you
awesome.
so you still have to follow through.
And if you ever need a clerk of the works, Fran was clerk of the works at the all around church and did a damn good job. No, it looks beautiful, Fran, it looks so beautiful. It looks so
Except
beautiful
some
over
of the
there.
grass isn't coming where it should.
I know, but you're taking care of it.
Yep.
So, and I learned something, your grass didn't come up. Jeannie said that was like the hottest part of the summer, the day they planted the seed. And we
I've
had to
asked them
stretch,
I've asked them to replant the grass. but-
awesome, and it
By
looks
next week is
beautiful.
a good time to
Yeah.
start planning by next week.
Yeah,
That
'cause
it
it's
was,
gonna be raining too.
yeah, yeah.
So
So back to there was another response from Front Porch Forum that I sent out to you guys just later today, I think it was. So just again, some more feedback about thanks for offering, asking for feedback, and here's some of my feedback, and he just said, just be sure that everything will fit up there in the plateau that you want. And I responded back and
Oh,
said,
good.
we're working on it.
He was worried about exhaust from the trucks and the
Yeah, well,
cars.
oh, for the playground?
it's just
Mhm.
it was a very,
Well, it's
he gave us,
thoughtful.
yeah,
Yeah,
very
it was very
thoughtful and
thoughtful.
gave
Yeah,
us good
just consider
feedback,
these
so.
things and make,
Mhm.
I appreciate it.
That's
Mhm.
cool.
So,
Let's see, anything else we need to discuss about those two projects?
No.
and then just to tell you, maybe I have said this, but Fran and I met with Justin Mansfield from Pettinelli Miracle.
That's the playground.
Yeah,
people.
playground regarding a proposal for the new location, and although I did tell him to stay within the footprint of the other playground, so. And that's why I called for an elevation. I asked Tyler I thought that he got the Chris Haggerty drawing, so.
We'll just have them do one up for that.
Yeah, well.
And then we have something to go on.
That's how I got it.
Yeah, Chris did an elevation drawing for the
Yes.
town.
Yeah.
That's what she needed.
That's what I wanted
Well,
to,
he shouldn't have asked me, because I
No.
wasn't, I just asked him to take that drawing and add a few things.
well, that's what I was
Okay.
asking him
Okay.
for, but he gave me the drawing that but I was meeting with the playground guy that day, so at
Oh.
least it had the elevations
Yeah,
on it.
'cause yeah, he has
So I
a
did-
good elevation drawing.
I thought he did. Yeah, that's what I was asking him
Yeah.
for, and why?
All right, so next steps for Volunteers Green.
We already did that. Move on.
No, I'm gonna put something out there.
What?
Do you want me to try to find someone to draw hypothetically something up there? If Chris Haggerty could give me enough circumference, I don't know what the word I want to use, space, circumference.
You actually, you need, and you saw the drawing, is it a topo?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a topographical survey of that area.
That's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so do you want me to
That's what I
take
have.
Chris's topo? Go to John, tell him we'll pay him this time, or someone.
John Lynn, you're talking.
Yes, John Lynn, I'm sorry. He's the one who drew Brown's Court.
I know.
All right, and
See John
see
every Wednesday.
if he would be willing to draw something just really roughly. Because
I think you need
I,
that.
I
you
do.
absolutely do need, because I
Yeah.
just heard 2,500 square feet, and then
Yeah,
you said
Yeah.
9,000, I don't think you're getting a 9,000 square foot
No, I didn't say
fence
9,000.
there.
4,000.
Oh,
4,000.
yeah. No, I
Okay.
It's
know.
gonna be, that's gonna push that area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure.
We
So-
also need to go back to these guys.
oh, totally. So we also need to go, so how do you feel if Kendra and I like get little subgroups and just thinking, maybe a subgroup meet with John Lynn, maybe a subgroup meet with Trey Bell? Am I saying it right? Trey Bell?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
The engineering
Yes.
people. So those two people to talk with them and come up with some stuff.
I think we have to.
Yeah, and I'd like to do it before the 16th.
Well, I think you need to come up with some stuff, but I do think that Mark is right, that we need to do another outreach and maybe not here. And I know we've done outreach, but things have definitely changed. I think that we need to, some people don't know about moving up to
Right,
the
If they,
plateau.
I don't know how they don't
I know,
know.
'cause if
I
you
don't
go
either,
for
but-
Quorum, it was posted in the,
But obviously, like, people aren't reading it, you
Yeah.
know, so maybe we send flyers home with all the elementary
So
kids.
how about this?
and the-
Would you be willing to just do a rough draft of a flyer that might go home to all the Richmond Elementary kids?
The middle school kids,
tell you-
for the
Oh,
Magic
and
Farmers
daycares.
Market and the daycares. Yes, I would, but
I would just want to have a facilitator, definitely.
yes,
Pay a facilitator. I do not want to be a person who's gonna facilitate a meeting
Oh,
like that.
totally.
So that is, to have that kind of, so I'm not sure who.
Plans though?
You
Right,
can't, you
I don't
can't
believe
have
that,
a, you can get general feeling about moving the playground up,
Mhm.
possibly changing the band shell, but that you can only get general feeling unless you
and that's
have.
all, that's what we need, right, is general feedback.
I think we have to have. a
And we'll,
little-
Can you finish unless, you were saying unless what?
No, I lost my
Only,
train. of
only
thought.
only general feelings unless where you could say you have to have a plan. or
At some point, you have to have, a
something
you can,
visual.
yeah.
Yeah, I,
You-
yeah.
John,
Real quick, one thing I heard tonight, which I hadn't heard, is the cost each flood of whatever it
Oh,
costs to
it's-
muck out.
it's
the building.
$67,000.
That needs to be on that, something on that
Yes.
flyer saying,
Yeah.
even if it's, in the
Is it
last
that-
flood, we expended $70,000. The cost of a playground is 109, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a two years, right? Cause we have a
Mhm.
flood.
we
every
had
year now.
3 last
We had
year.
three.
So I think something to that effect in that flyer. so-
Education.
Education, cause
On
it
flood.
makes total sense to, for an
The
engineer.
man
up to
hours and the
plateau.
total
The
cost.
total cost of not just the bathrooms though, of when they had to fix the playground, when they had to fix the.
That is
flagpole.
$67,000
just the
from the last,
playground.
when the
All-
other one.
No, I
when-
think you should do all 3 floods, the last 3
Yes.
floods from this.
This is
date,
how
this
much has
date,
been
this
spent.
date,
And the
how much.
downtime of the park where you can't use it.
it was
Closed.
down for a long
We,
time.
we
in the
had
summer.
all those numbers were
Mhm.
when we had that summit. I
Yeah,
think.
all, we
So-
had all those, yeah, they present, so all we could do is watch the tape and watch Pete Goslin, because he gave all that stuff
Or look at the minutes.
On the
It's
minutes.
in the minutes.
For the transcript.
of the
But
transcript.
I do think even if we just, if that got out there and put that out
That's-
there,
it's
not just on
crazy.
Front Porch Forum, because people, they see it and it's long or whatever, and I know I skip through some stuff and,
Not everybody signs up for.
No,
Porch.
they
You won't
don't.
be there.
So-
you know, and I,
It's not a.
Timing.
good-
yeah.
How long do we need to build a flyer, A? And then how long after that until we host such a thing, such an outreach timeline?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying we have to have an exact date.
Do you
We're
think
talking, are we
it's gonna
talking
be
like a couple
possible
weeks? Are we
to
talking?
have that done before the October 16th?
No.
I think you'll have the flyers done. I think you'll have a meeting scheduled. But I don't think you'll have the
Renting
actual.
the space, finding the space, when it's open, when it's available. You
The
just,
park,
Mhm.
show up there.
It's dark by then.
Can you do the library?
You
could
do
it
the
on the weekend.
library, most cases.
Library.
The library space was, I rented it for an event, it was like $50.
You don't have to
really
pay
good.
to rent the
No,
library.
Yeah, the
because we're
it has to
town
be available.
committee.
It has to be
It
available.
has to be a
So-
time that it's available and we have to have.
Just
No.
do it on a nighttime at the library. And
should be a big
send out
enough
the
space.
flyers and hand them out and say, come, and if you have an input, please speak up, and this is what's going on, and if we can get it done before the 16th, but we have to have something drawn up.
So can we say like we draw up a draft of that in 2.5 full weeks from now, place us around, let's see, we're on a Thursday, that's why I say half. 1, 2, if you say like, okay, we'll have it by, I don't know if it's easier for people to review such a thing personally via the weekend or during the week. I don't know if that matters for anybody.
For
but
us?
me. And so Megan, you're, potentially daycare days, so I don't know if that's something on the weekends. If we then put it on like, okay, by Wednesday, the 30th, that's September 30th is a Monday. Say we'll have a draft, so then we meet about it. Our next meeting is then somewhere like the 3rd or the 2nd.
Or do we draw up a
Thursday.
draft, email it out,
It's
say
hard to
this is what it
do
is.
that because you can't communicate changes back and forth unless we're only one sending it to you. Remember?
Mhm.
So that's the only reason why I said, let's have a draft by the 30th. We all commented on it on the 2nd, and then we distribute it, however we're going to. Hopefully, yeah, depending on if it was clean or not. If it
Right.
has changes, then you go out.
And then we find out
we'll
when the
finalize
library.
date by around that time when we're at that meeting. For
So
the
who would
actual
you
event.
recommend or suggest being a facilitator? Like one of us or somebody just to?
I think
Just-
your idea of having it be somebody unrelated to us isn't a bad one,
Right.
because then it's not skewed by anything we have to say.
We
I
don't
would
get
say,
upset about something.
exactly.
Right.
I mean, but we do have to ensure that certain things are talked about. So that would have to be clear to the facilitator so that we ensure that we can't just not talk about
Yeah.
moving the playground up there because somebody wants to talk about something else and it gets diverted. So you have to ensure that certain things get discussed, but the facilitator could be given a list. And
So are you thinking, I'm just thinking in my head how this might work. Are you thinking about possibly having the playground gentleman come and maybe Gary come with
No.
his proposal?
no,
No, this is just to get a feeling.
What you
what do
want?
people think about moving the playground? What do people think about the band shell and the pavilion? What do people think about moving the bathroom and getting rid of the concession stand? What do people think? Not,
There's no plan.
Mm.
What do you think?
What would you like to see for this town? But
but
also
to
while we.
this
here,
just volunteers, great, not
This volunteer's grant.
all
Just
your other-
volunteers green,
the
and
spending.
Oh,
No, I do
Facilitator?
think, I do think at that meeting, you need to say, you need to understand what you can put on what I call the
The
plateau.
limitations.
yeah.
Right.
Limitations, because people, somebody's gonna want a swimming pool up there.
Huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
so like at the beginning of the meeting, you
Some
set,
ground rules, some.
you set the ground rules, you
this
give
is
them,
we're using
this
based
is
on-
what we're working with, and this is what we're up against. So,
Just a brief,
but I also think when we go to that zoning board, we are gonna need a list, a fine-tuned one of what we're asking for.
Oh, I agree.
mhm.
So you have to meet before the 16th.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. I think we meet, like I said,
2 weeks.
we try and draft this by the 30th of September. We meet on, say, the 2nd. That's an arbitrary date, so people check your calendars for any dates around there. And then one of the things we talk about is the flyer, what we think of it changes. And then secondarily, what is our list for that 16th, October 16th, which is then a little over a week.
You have to have your public meeting that Megan's talking about before this.
That's not gonna happen.
Correct, so I think that's important for everybody to realize that, is you're not gonna
that's-
have your.
No, we're gonna have a date
meeting.
scheduled for our public meeting,
Right.
but we still have our list of general things. That's the same list as we
We've got other
presented
things, yeah.
at the
Yeah, we
summit.
won't have anything back on the 16th. for the.
I
mean, we
understand
already
we want
know
the
that
public
the-
feedback. We've already
The
discussed what
dimensions
the
of
list
the
is.
playground
before,
aren't
so
gonna
it's
work.
just
I
Writing
mean,
the list.
as they're being, I mean, we need what it is now with the safety zones, the safety corridor.
Well, we can't have anything unless we have a switchback up there with ADA to get there.
Yeah.
You know, what's the point of putting a bathroom or a playground up there if you can't get, and you're making this wonderful ADA playground for these kids and these families and they can't get there.
It's a big.
We gotta go from the ground
Because
up, literally.
I think our.
Gary,
Sorry, I see your hand go up with it.
No, I know there's reasons not for this idea, but if you put your playground behind the library, you could do whatever playground you want. I know there's a lot of cross pollination that would be lost from different uses, but you wouldn't be limited by size or a lot of other things.
Is that still a flood zone?
It's not in the floodway. It's in the flood.
No, the over by, to my knowledge, directly behind the library is not in the floodplain. The floodplain kind of, don't directly quote me on this, but my understanding of it is it comes up, runs kind of on the, if I'm in the town offices, kind of the left corner, runs around behind the post office parking lot. And then I believe for the most part, last time I looked at the flood map on the town office, from like the parking lot over is not in the floodplain.
Kind of like God coming down and answering.
yeah, I was like, whoa. Forgot you were there, but we're glad.
Again,
you-
don't directly quote me on that. I could be wrong, but that is kind of what I remember from when the last time I looked at Bridge Street, or like where the town office was.
But yes, that's true, but since that's not one of the 3 town parks,
We're not working
I
on it.
mean, how do we even,
Well, it's,
who-
it's
or
something
we
that
say
might
that
come up,
maybe, yeah,
come
that
up. in our
others could
public-
look at,
yeah.
yeah. I don't.
And I think that that's. what
hadn't
we have to be
even
prepared
thought
for.
of-
This
or-
isn't really gonna be like finding a plan. Like,
Yeah.
it's not,
We're just
it's
getting
going to be
public-
getting everybody's input and then you consolidate all of the inputs to decide, okay, what does the general public maybe would agree to? Like,
Yeah.
we're not gonna leave that having a plan. Like, that's
No,
not
right,
what's
I
gonna
know that.
happen. And I think we all have to just.
Right.
Yeah.
Understand that that's not what's going to be accomplished. there.
It's gonna be all sorts of people yelling at us.
I think Gary's question is a legitimate question for it to be posed. Do we remove the playground from Volunteers Green and not put one back here? And I think you're going to find the public telling you, no, we want a playground here, because when our kids are playing soccer, our younger children like to go to the playground. And I think it's gonna be overwhelming for you to keep a playground at the park. But if Gary wants you to ask that question, should we move it somewhere else, like behind the library? I don't support it behind the library near the parking lot and away from all the other kids in the community and stuff like that. I think.
But
the
yes,
park-
it's a question we
But
can
it's a
ask. though.
question
correct.
to
That's
ask.
what I'm saying, is, so that, I'm just saying, for example, I would be somebody who would say, no, I want you to keep it over at the park. And that's a legitimate question to ask though, because I think you're gonna find overwhelming support for whatever plan you come up with to keep one there, whether it's up or down, check one box.
And, we were talking about education on the finances, every time it floods. Another thing we need to do, and hardly anybody knows this, the other education piece we need to do is, because of things that are happening in our public schools, we are not allowed to use the
Yeah, you can't
general
use it.
public cannot use school grounds during school hours.
Or all summer when they have summer camps going on, because we tried to
Exactly.
do it.
We're not
and we
allowed
were
to
told
use
You
them.
cannot go there between
So you didn't
7:30
know?
and 5:30.
No, I didn't know that.
So, yeah,
As a
7:30
teacher,
and
we saw one
5:30.
strange,
You
and this
cannot
was
go
over
there.
10 years
Because you're a
ago, so,
stranger.
yeah.
And you could be trying to steal somebody's job.
Yeah. We-
Fair enough.
we-
I have children. I don't want some random person showing up
That's the
either.
Questions that you're asking in public, you guys are talking about for your agenda, your facilitator, I like that, I really like that idea. This is the facilitator, this is the questions that you're posing out to the public. We've had many ideas about the playground staying where it is, being moved up, potentially being moved over behind the library. How does the community feel about that? And then hear what the room has
right,
to say.
but I think we, give a little, maybe our committee gives a little overcap.
Yeah, the educational.
Keeping
piece
in
of that,
mind,
right.
yeah,
Right.
this is how much it costs, or maybe even have Pete there, have him do it.
But no, I
don't
think
think
you
we
do
can
very
draw
simply.
in
Bigger.
everybody.
This is
I just
a-
Put the data on the
Yeah.
flyer. You briefly present at the beginning saying, these are our parameters, this is our understanding. We are not going outside of like costs associated with something else you want to talk about with this money. This is the,
This is it.
and then.
Yeah,
you-
this is not.
Like,
Why are
there's
we
not a
not
present, it's not a presentation, it's not these different people saying, it's whoever in public shows up and wants to answer, make sure we have the list of questions we want to ensure, like Kara just said, get talked about so that we hit on everything and we have a facilitator and et cetera. But it's not about any of us or our specialists. We've heard from them, we've brought them in, we don't need to.
I think you
That's
guys
not-
have to also be very clear to the public that you're not going to make a decision that night, that you're here to hear from them. And that at future meetings of you, if they want to go and attend, you're welcome to that, where you guys develop your plan. Because I think it's very important, because they're gonna go like, well, what are you gonna vote on tonight, or what's
Right.
the vote gonna be? And you guys just want to absorb everything.
We want your opinions.
Okay, we need to get out of here.
Oh,
We have to schedule things.
I know.
No, wait,
I have. I'm sorry, yes.
The one thing I haven't heard is any development up on the plateau. There's those trees that,
They can go.
They can go, we asked the family.
okay.
So it was.
I'm, that's all I need to know. 'cause I'm looking at
But
those
that's a
trees,
good
they're pretty
education, that's a
problematic.
good education.
That's a
But
good point.
people, again, should know that the
Education.
trees
Yep.
are
That were
just,
donated by.
Were donated in memory of their son who passed.
right, okay.
We've talked to the family
They
and blah, blah.
welcome
Yeah.
change.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Yeah.
adding that to the
Yes.
Okay, so Kendra, when were you
Okay,
proposing next
flyer.
meeting?
draft flyer by the 30th, and then our next meeting
give
somewhere
you
like the
help.
second, third,
No, wait, what was that? Sorry.
the 30th.
Yeah.
No, it's your flyer.
But you know what?
You
I
get the
would keep
questions,
sending
Megan,
it-
I'm happy to add little pictures and different
I
stuff that you do.
Flyer
Well, I can
go back and forth
Yeah.
and one person.
Yeah, send the flyer around and
Let
we'll
me know
just
what
keep
data,
getting it perfect.
data.
Yeah, I'll need whatever Pete said in that, because I wasn't there for that when he was here.
Pete's
Goslin.
Flower Garden.
Flower garden.
Oh,
Well, we want to.
oh, you want to make
Data. We want it.
Okay.
Oh,
We,
it's like,
the, the Landsat Garden, we want to.
Yeah.
Send all your ideas to Megan. If she's gonna collect them all.
Yeah.
All the things you've talked about tonight, anything that you think of, send it to her and she'll try to build it into the flyer. And I just heard her and Jeannie say that they're gonna work together on it. So copy Jeannie on it.
I'll need Pete's all of the money, what it's cost for the last 3
It's
floods,
outrageous.
and how long the park was closed. I think that's
August
gonna be,
15th.
That's all documented.
Yeah.
She wants you to resend it, so she's not gonna look for it.
Okay.
I don't have time to look for that.
Yeah.
No.
And then, next meeting.
Second, third, what days are people available?
Tuesdays are, and it doesn't matter.
I'm not
Whatever.
here that week.
Next
We're
week.
not here that week.
Next
No,
week,
and I can't do the following week at all. I could do the second or the third, and that's.
I can do the
all.
second.
And
Which is what night?
I
Wednesday.
have company the whole next
Wednesday.
week, and traveling. Second is
call
a
in, Fran?
Wednesday.
Yes.
What's that?
I'll be in.
It's okay if you say
Where
no.
are you gonna be
I'm
now?
just making sure I ask
You
the
should
question.
talk.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just say no. You don't have to explain to me.
I'm gonna be in the Azores, and so.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Okay, that's a
With
good
the time
excuse.
difference.
Oh,
Can we get in a meeting
don't
before
know.
that with just the quorum?
Say that.
Or
4 is quorum.
can
So
we get
Tessa,
in
you
a
off?
meeting before that, or
Huh?
just, do we want a meeting before that, though?
I think the second's
Second?
fine. We can work via computer on the flyer. And we can just keep sending rough drafts out and we'll keep giving our input.
One,
No,
no,
you
you
can't do that.
can't do it unless you
No,
only
no.
send to one.
No. If we're doing a flyer, because we're not making we're making.
You're making
decisions
decisions about what message you're sending. You
Okay.
can't do it.
Send your opinions to that one person.
Okay, yeah. So one person send it out to 3. And the other
You can
person
send-
send it
Well,
out to
no,
the other.
she can send it
Send
to
it
all
to
of
all of
us,
us.
but then the
Right.
comments you can only send.
Send
Don't
back
do
to
a
her.
reply.
Oh,
No, and don't try and do the 3. It sometimes adds the other people because you've been
So
emailing.
just
those other
reply to
people.
me.
Just
and then
reply to
afterwards
Megan.
for
Okay.
Jeannie, right?
And,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
And Jeannie and Megan will talk and then it won't be a quorum.
Okay, and then Wednesday, October 2nd. And then also put on your calendar
So, but
October 16th, because I
But-
think we all should be there.
I think, Hale and Hardy, because they're having a blood drawing on the 9th, which would usually be, they're planning on moving our meeting to the 16th.
Okay.
Oh, right, yep.
Maybe they all should go.
Well,
Pardon?
Maybe they all should go to the 16th.
True. So we're definitely meeting on the second now, right?
So
Yes.
meeting
Okay.
on the second.
We
of
could
Sep-
go to the dinner and some of it, the Hale and Hardy dinner.
Except
And then
I'm
come
on the
here at
seventh.
7.
On that meeting, we will be finalizing the flyer, making a plan on how we're gonna distribute, making the list of, planning a date for what, because that flyer will have to have a date on it.
And
Plan.
everybody bring a name of a moderator.
So that'll be left blank, at your date until we.
One recommendation
What?
is for somebody to check with the library to see available dates, so that you
Yeah.
know when you
Yeah.
plan your flyer.
Yeah.
I'm,
Right, so we're gonna come to that meeting not having a date.
You'll do that?
It'll be
Jenny?
I
blank.
can do that.
Thank
I can
you.
just see what.
So she
what's
will have a
available.
date by that meeting of availability.
Right, but we won't have a date.
Yeah, but we
She's
don't
just
need to
gonna
have-
check.
Okay. We done?
Alrighty.
Say bye-bye. All in favor of ending the meeting now?
No.
Signify by saying no. I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting at 9:24. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Stay here.
Thank you, Gary. I'm sorry you didn't get to present, but please.